School District Board of Trustees. Roll call, please, Ms. Emery.
President Dice.
Present.
Member DeWin.
Present.
Member Ash.
Here.
Great, thank you. Can we all now still, can we now all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, do we have any changes to the agenda this evening? I think we're pretty much set, right, for this agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
No objections, me being the third person here. So we now have item D, public comments. If there's any members of the public that wish to address the board on topics on not on this evening's agenda, please speak now. All right, we're moving on to interview of executive search firms, item E1. Okay. And so, will you introduce? We got it. Thank you.
This item is to select a search firm for the retiring superintendent. Proposals have been submitted to the school board. They have been reviewed, and we are down to 4 firms, which the board will interview tonight. And then later in the agenda, we'll select one of the firms.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Sounds good.
And just to, for our viewing audience, note that the 4 firms have been provided 45 minutes of presentation, discussion, and questions. And so that's what we'll start this evening. And we now first have the Costco Group. If you'd like to please come up to the podium. Thank you.
And Steve, I don't think the mic's on.
Okay.
I'm Miguel Duane. Nice to meet you as well, Steve.
There's a mute button already. Just hold
Hello?
it down. Oh, we're good.
Is it on?
You're good.
Okay, great. Thank you for inviting us to speak tonight, and we appreciate the opportunity. My name is Steve Goldstone. Dave Brown, who would be your search consultant, unfortunately is not here tonight. I could have come in here and said, I'm Dave Brown, and you never know the difference. Dave is just retiring as the executive director of WASC, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, and he's having a long plan going away shindig tonight, and he just couldn't miss that event. But this is important enough that we did want to have a representative here, but I apologize for that.
Appreciate it.
Let me tell you a little bit about the Costco Group. We are a firm consisting of 34 members. Most are retired or about to be retiring. Superintendents, several business people who have had business backgrounds rather than superintendency. And we came together, Frank Koska and myself, to form this organization in the year 2000. I was retiring at that time, and so was Frank. And it was really a situation where we decided we've been in education our whole lives, and we believe that we've made a difference, and hopefully a significant difference in the lives of students. And we were at the crossroads in our lives, retiring, when we spent our professional life doing that. And we were trying to think, what could we do to continue to have that kind of an impact and influence? And we met with several of our mentors, people that have guided us and helped us over the years. And they suggested, there's the relationship between a school board and a superintendent is one of the most significant relationship. Other than the teacher-student relationship, it is the most important relationship in a school district. And if you've had the fortunate experience of working with a superintendent where everyone is working together very closely. That doesn't mean always agreeing, but working together cooperatively. You know that has an influence throughout the district. And if you've had the unfortunate situation of working in an opposite situation, you know that rancor is often translated right into the classroom. So we understand how important that is, and we understand that one of your most important responsibilities is to select a superintendent. And so we started doing this. We don't do a lot of searches. We've, over the 10 years, I guess it's 13 years we've been in business, we've done about 64 searches because we really want to concentrate on those searches that we do. We've had experience. Dave and I have done several searches together. We just completed San Lorenzo, and I'd like to mention San Lorenzo specifically, in part because it's in your county, but in part Dave and I had worked with the board there 5 years ago when they selected Dennis Bias as their superintendent. And they asked us, and we were honored, if we would do the job again, because they were very pleased with the process that we used and the product. They were very pleased with Dennis. And so Dave and I did that job. Interestingly enough, Dennis did not announce his retirement till late in the school year. And we were hired in late July, and the board wanted a new superintendent by the time school started. We said that may be a little fast, but we'll have somebody in place in early October. And so we had about an 8-week window. We did explain to the board that that's very unusual. It's unusual to have such a short period of time. It's also unusual because it's August and September, and most people are busy at the opening schools and getting on with it. I think because of the nature of that school district and where it's come from in the last several years, and some really active recruiting that we engaged in, they had a terrific field of candidates. But one of the things we told that board, and we tell every board, but in that situation it was even more pertinent, is if you get down to the end of the process and you're not satisfied with the candidates, don't settle. This is just too important. Right. And if you're unhappy, and frankly it's only happened twice in the 60-some jobs that we've done, if you're not satisfied and you don't feel that there's a real great connection with the candidate, and can't find a candidate and all you need is one, then we'll go out and do it again. And so we encourage the board there, as we encourage all boards, but especially when 8 weeks, don't settle. Well, they didn't have to settle because they had outstanding candidates. We were very pleased with that. I mention that because Dave was involved in that search. I know the area. I was interim superintendent in Berkeley. We did a search in Hayward, in Livermore. My first superintendency was in Albany about 100 years ago, and so very familiar with the area. Dave is familiar with the area. He lives in the Bay Area also. He's a retired superintendent, and as I said, he, for the last 10 years, has been WASC director. Let me talk about the process that we use, and I want to emphasize that this is really an inclusive process, that we want to include as many people in your school district and as many people in the community in that process as possible. So one of the things that we do is the very first meeting that we have with the board after we've been selected is meet with the board and bring to them a timeline and a process. And you have that process in our proposal. But we walk the board through it. We set up dates. If we set up dates in January for a date in May, sometimes that doesn't hold because busy people. But we try and stick with the calendar. But we also want at that time for the board to really understand the process, and if there are changes, modifications, we'll talk about those and make those if the board so desires, because it's your process. It's not our process. You have to own it because you're going to own the final decision. And so that's very, very important. At that same meeting, what we do is, and we're just so technologically adept that we put up butcher paper on the walls, and we ask the board to brainstorm. Brainstorm what you think are the greatest strengths of your school district, your community. What you see as your greatest concerns and the needs, what you want to focus on. And then what are the characteristics, background, training, experience, values that you'd like to see in your new superintendent? And we put all of that up on these charts. We then ask you, now who do you want us to meet with? And we, depending upon the community, there have been some communities where we've spent 10 days in meetings, others several days, but meeting early in the morning till late at night. But we ask the board, who do you want us to meet with? Teachers organization, teachers in general, administrators, parent groups, special ed community, the larger community, members of local governments. It's your call, and we'll meet with those folks. The only assistance we ask from your staff in our whole process is to help us organize those meetings, because we don't know how to reach those people or where to meet with them. But we're flexible, and we'll meet anytime, anywhere in your community with these people. What we do then in these various groups is the same thing that we did with you, with one exception. But we ask them to brainstorm the needs, and then the greatest strengths, then the needs. And then we ask them, and I'll prioritize, what are your greatest strengths? What are the things that you want your new superintendent to lead your district in building upon and maintaining? And then what are those greatest needs? And then prioritize. And so there'll probably be, at the end of that, maybe 8 strengths, 8 needs. And then based upon those strengths and needs, what do you want to see in your superintendent? Okay. And so at the end of that process, with every group, we bring to you every word that they say. And so we put that down on the butcher paper, we type it up, and send it to you several days before a board meeting, and ask you to review and then look at the first brainstorming that you did, because you may see that there's some things that have been identified in the community or in the district that you hadn't thought of that night, and you'll add to your list, or sometimes you'll take something off. And at that point, we ask you to set criteria and to indicate what are the greatest strengths, greatest needs, and what do you want to see in the superintendent. And those then become our marching orders. Those become the basis for an electronic brochure that we publish. They become the basis for the questions that we suggest you ask. They become the basis for the background checks that we do of the candidates. So that's really the heart of what we do. So we do it for several reasons. Number one, we learn about your district. And number two, we involve your community in that process. And we think that's very, very important. We then recruit candidates for your job. And that's where the 34 members of the COSCA group come into the picture. As I said, 100 years ago, when my first superintendency was in Albany, there were 130 applicants for that job. We would keel over, frankly, if we had 130 applicants for any job nowadays. I mean, the world has changed, and there are not huge numbers of people interested in becoming superintendents. And you folks know some of the reasons for that, because it's a very, very challenging job. It's a great job, but it's very challenging. So we cannot just rely on sending out an advertisement in the AXA newspaper or putting something online. We have to ask our members to recruit. And so we say that tonight there is someone at 6:30, and they're in their office finishing up the day. They don't know anything about Emery School District. They may not know where Emeryville is. And so, but one of our people may say, I looked at the criteria that the board and Emery established, and you fit that. You might want to talk to the consultants. And so that's how we really reach out. And many times, the ultimate candidates that the board picks are those people that we've recruited into the process. We are very pleased. As I said, there are not huge numbers of candidates, but we have never found in the jobs that we've done a lack of good candidates. You don't need 130 candidates. Actually, you need one, but we bring to you more than one. We then advertise, we recruit we usually like to have about a 6-week period to do that, because that person that has been recruited was very happy with her job or his job, may not be thinking about applying anywhere. So they may not have letters of reference. They may just not be prepared. So we need that 6-week period. We then convene a panel of our members of our organization who will go through the applicants. So if there's 25, 30, 40 applicants, they'll go through the applications and try and look at the criteria that you established, the strengths and the needs and the characteristics, and see in their papers that they have filed with us whether they meet that criteria. At the same time that we're doing that, we provide the board with the applications and the letters of reference of all the candidates. We think it's really important for the board to see all of your candidates and for you to go through those files before we come to you. And then we come to you and we bring you a list of those that we're recommending. And we'll tell you why we recommend. Before we've done that, we've also done extensive reference checks. And again, I think the power of our organization, because there are 34 of us, we know a lot of people. And because of our particular litigious society, sometimes it's difficult to get honest references. And so I think because of personal contact, we're able to get the real truth about people. And we have several other sources that we do that. We have never, in our experience, been disappointed or embarrassed by bringing a candidate to the board and there's something in their background that comes out either during the interview process or, even worse, when they're on the job that would disqualify them. So we do a thorough job there. So anyway, we bring a list of candidates to the board, and the board will say, sometimes they'll say, that's fine, we agree. Or they'll say, why didn't you include so-and-so? And we'll explain what our criteria and why we didn't. But we also say to the board, but it's your call. This is what we know about this person, but if you want to include him, that's certainly what you ought to do. And they may say, we know something about somebody on the board. They may have been in the district before. They may not have been in the district, or they may know somebody, or somebody knows somebody, and you don't have a desire to interview. So the final judgment as to who to interview are the members of the board. We then schedule a board meeting, that's the first closed session. All those other meetings are open. Our first closed session is when we meet with you, with the candidates, and then we organize a day of interviews with the candidates. We provide you, based upon your criteria, some suggested questions that you can use or modify or submit your own questions. And then we hold that first round of interviews. We suggest to the board that they hold a second round of interviews with 1 or 2 or maybe 3 finalists. And sometimes boards say, hey, we're so excited about this one candidate, let's just go with it. We really encourage a second interview. The first interview is very structured, and you ask the same questions in the same amount of time of all the candidates. The second interview is more freewheeling, and we suggest to the board, sit around somewhere. When we were in San Lorenzo, the board president invited all of us to his house, and we had a very nice interview with 2 finalists in the home. And so it was comfortable, and they could really ask some pertinent questions. Then the board, if they make a decision, if they're satisfied with a final candidate, we urge all 5 board members or 7 board members to visit the home school district. There's usually it's an opportunity for the candidate to design a schedule of people to meet. But we encourage board members to meet with those he or she wants you to meet with, but also wander around and pull the custodian aside and see what he has to say, and pull this person and that person aside and see who you want to see. And if that goes well, then we, one of our services that's included is to negotiate a contract. We think it's unfortunate, and as former superintendents, we've been involved in the very first real contact you have with your new board. The first business is to negotiate a contract. And by its nature, even in the best of circumstances, that can be adversarial. And we don't want that to happen. And so what we do is we work with the board. What are your parameters? What can you live with? What can your community live with? And then we ask the candidate the same thing. And then we bring them together and then work with the district's legal counsel in designing a contract. And then we'll work with the board, and if you so desire, to make an announcement, a press release. And then we provide, during the first year of this new superintendent service, mentoring service. We find that oftentimes, and I think all of us can understand it, there comes a need to maybe just bounce something off somebody who's not directly involved, and you feel, you can honestly express your feelings. And so we provide that service. Some people take advantage of it, and some don't. We've also worked with, over the years, I've been working with some of our earlier placements over the years. So we say 1 year, but then you develop a relationship, and that continues. So that is our process. What makes us unique? I think one thing that makes us unique is that huge outreach that we have to people. What we don't want is for somebody to say at the end of it, some person who's been heavily involved in your schools, to say, well, we never had a chance to have our input. There oftentimes is that person, but what we want to be sure is that there's been enough announcements out there that online we have a way for people to provide their input if they can't get to a meeting. We just want the community to feel. So we really reach out. We've been very successful in our placements over the years. As I said, we do all of the work with the exception of organizing those meetings. And I think this has become a real passion for us in doing this. As I mentioned, when we retired, we thought, what are we going to do when we grow up? And we searched, and frankly, we didn't know how satisfying this could be when we see that there's a great match between a board and a superintendent, and then we see the success that that person has in moving that district forward and in working with the students of that district to be sure that they have all the opportunities that they deserve. So with that, I hope you have some questions for me.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Sure, we're mic'd up here. Thank you so much. We do have a number of prepared questions, and then an opportunity for the board to extend any follow-up questions from your presentation.
Okay.
In addition, so what I'm going to ask is if maybe we can start perhaps with Member Simon with the first question. Do you mind? Thanks.
Just at the beginning that I enjoyed your application, the thoughtfulness and the
Just stand up here so I can hear better.
Oh, yeah, is it on?
What will attract a superior?
It's not on.
candidate?
Saving batteries today, look.
Just takes a second to turn on. Given what you know about our district, what will attract a superior candidate to our district?
Yeah.
Actually, if you want to grab that mic,
Do you mind if I?
please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is this the bad mic?
What will attract superior candidates to your district? Part of that is that process that we go through to determine, what your needs are and what your strengths are. So you need, and your community needs to tell us. I've been a resident of the Bay Area for a number of years, so I know something about your school district, both from what I read, from my professional experiences and such. But what we have found is we try and put that aside and learn firsthand when we come into a school district. Because, believe it or not, you can't always believe what you read in the newspaper or what you hear in the rumor mill and all that. So that's one of the real reasons that we try and get as much input as possible, to be able to then go out and recruit good people. So I can't say right now what are those things, but I can tell you there are good candidates out there. And so whether it's, some people say, and I'm not talking about this school district, but in general, there are candidates for every school district. And so we've worked in some school districts where there's a great deal of dysfunction and acrimony with the board. And what we have found is there are people who want to work in those situations, okay? Because they feel one of their strengths is to bring people together. And so that kind of a candidate may not be the candidate for another school district where people are working together and getting along well. So it really depends, and on the situation. So I don't want to prejudge how we do that. I can tell you, in all circumstances, we've been able to find good candidates. 8 years ago, I was asked by a school district that I had been superintendent for 6 years to come back and do a search for them. And I knew a lot about that school district because I'd been there 10 years earlier. It's a large school district with about 30,000 students. And we probably had 500 people that we talked to in small groups over a 2-week period. In every single one of those groups, the problem in that district was the board, in their perception, in the perception of the members of the school district, members of the community. And I knew some of these board members. Either they had been on the board 10 years earlier when I was there, or I knew them in the community. And we had to come to the board and tell them that. I'll tell you, they were able to hire the best superintendent that really brought them together. And I remember he sent me a newspaper clipping after the first, I think it was 6 months. There was an article in the newspaper. Oh, no. After 6 months, he had a little cake and ice cream party after board meeting to say to the board, we've gone 6 months without not one negative article in the newspaper. And I'll tell you, for that community, that was wonderful. So he had that particular skill. We've worked in some other school districts where everything is copacetic, and they're really trying to move on to the next level. And it's finding someone who can work cooperatively with a board and really challenge the board and challenge the school district to go to that next level. So long answer, but there are good candidates for your school district.
How will your firm approach the search in light of what you know about the initiatives of this board and district and the educational challenges facing our district?
Well, it's pretty similar answer, I believe. We want to learn firsthand because what we don't want to do, and we've had some of this in the past. Worked in a district where there's been some bad press, and so all they know about the school district is what they've read in the newspaper or what somebody tells them. And what we have found in some of those cases, it's really not the case, and we've never been in a school district, either as professionals or doing what we've been doing for the last 12 years, 13 years, where we haven't found good people who want to do a great job. They're good people. And so it's how you are able to use your skill in working with the board and helping to maximize the ability of those good people to perform. So my answer is, and tell me if I haven't gotten to it, is as we learn about your school district, that helps us in being able to recruit those good people, but able to tell them that, District XYZ has a terrible reputation or a great reputation, but here's what we've learned about that school district. So look at our brochure, look at our electronic brochure, talk to us, and we'll tell you. The first thing that, I guess nothing's 100%, but 99 and 9/10% that candidates ask us is, what's the school board like? That's usually the question, because the school board is who that person will be working with. And we're always honest about it. And we've had some wonderful times working with school boards, and we've had some challenging times. And that's often when a school board is working at cross purposes, not just disagreeing, because I think disagreement is healthy. It's the way they handle it. But if it's a school district, a board that's very difficult, we tell the candidate. And there's some people who want that. And others, we're working with a school district now in Southern California, Frank Koska and I. We did the search 5 years ago in that district also. And it's virtually the same school board that existed then with one new addition. And at that time, the board was very challenging to work with. And for us, there was a lack of trust. It was a very, very difficult time. Well, they had gone through 3 superintendents in about 4 years. And there was a reason they had a lack of trust. They hired a superintendent 5 years ago who, working with that board, and now it's really a wonderful board, has turned that district around. And it's remarkable to us to work with the same people and to see how they're working together, how they're working so well with us. Listening to the community and the members of the school district, and what a change happened in 5 years. But that's because we listened and we helped recruit people to interview in that district that could meet those needs. Did I answer your question?
I think you're answering the questions, but given the amount of time we have, if you could be a little more succinct, I
certainly
think
can.
that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Steve, which of your recent clients are most similar to Emery Unified School District?
Districts are similar in different ways. We completed the job in a district that's similar demographically than yours, but much larger in San Bernardino.
Well, let's look more at the size.
The size of the district. We've done a small district in Sonoma County that was similar in size, right around 1,000 students. That's the smallest district we've done. We've done some districts with 3,000. The one I mentioned in Southern California has 10,000. So we've done a variety of districts. We've done districts with a variety of different demographic makeup and such, and economic.
Right.
So we've had a variety of experiences.
Okay. So the one the answer to the question is the district in Sonoma?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And
It's size-wise.
okay. And how did you successfully procure a new superintendent there?
Pretty much through the process that I've explained of understanding that community.
Okay.
And it's interesting that oftentimes in a small school district compared to that large school district, we'll get more input because people feel more involved with their schools and feel more ownership. So really learning about their school district through that process, and then going out and recruit. And that's the power, I think, of the 34 members of our group.
Okay.
All right, my turn. All right, how will you customize community engagement? And you spoke about it already too, but how will you customize community engagement and recruitment efforts in light of the district's engagement parameters in our RFP and the community's diverse population?
As we learn about and you tell us who you want us to meet with, we use that information in designing the meetings that we'll have. One of the things that I don't think I mentioned, we do not ask people to identify themselves when they come to the meetings, because we want people to feel that they can be open and honest in their expressions. If there are languages that we need to accommodate, we'll either provide that service, or better, we ask the district, because people often feel more comfortable if there's someone in the district that they know who can offer that translation service. So, number one, you tell us who to meet with, because you know who you want us to meet with, and you know your community, and then you help us to determine what kind of modifications we need to provide so that we're able to hear people. And we will hold as many meetings as possible. And we want people to feel comfortable in meetings. So sometimes we design those under rather limited parameters so people can come out and feel comfortable. So a parent of a special ed kid may not feel comfortable in a meeting with special ed teachers and expressing themselves, as an example.
No. Okay, last question. What traditional and unique strategies will your firm use to recruit potential candidates? I think you kind of hit on that.
One of the things we ask the board is as you develop parameters, do you want us to limit our search to California, or are you interested in having a wider search? And that's something that we would talk to the board about, the positives and negatives about that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that we would ask you to do. But I've really described that process that we use.
Right.
I think it's, I guess it's both traditional
Right.
and unique. I think the traditional part is, or the unique part, I think, is we reach out a great deal, and we'll spend as much time. It isn't just one day or one meeting or one time, 7 o'clock and you all come. I think that's something that makes us unique, because we really spend the time. We also we've had a lot of experience doing this, both as search consultants, but also as superintendents. And if you know superintendents, there's no lack of opportunities for us to give advice. We'll give you our best shot,
Mm-hmm.
but it's your decision, and we honor that.
Great.
Okay, and we'll say this is what we recommend or what we don't recommend, but it's your shot. The only time we don't make a recommendation, there's one recommendation we don't make, and that is, hey, Steve, who do you think we should hire after the first round of interviews? And in part, we think, gee, it's a real compliment when a board asks us that, because we've developed that relationship.
Right.
But we say, that has to be your decision.
Right.
You have to feel comfortable. And you feel comfortable not only in your brain,
Right.
that this person will work well here, but also in your gut.
Right.
God, this just feels right, or it doesn't.
Okay.
That's great. I have one final pre-written question, and then we'll open it up to any follow-up question the board has. And definitely, we started later than we expected, so we have another 10 minutes. So just to, I'm good. I'm keeping close tabs on my numbers tonight. But if you could provide a little description about previous efforts in which you engage teachers in the superintendent selection process, if you've done that, if your firm's done that.
Couple of answers. When we work with the board, we talk about the pros and cons of having others involved in the interview process. We talk about the pros and cons, and we've done it both ways. But we want the board to understand what the strengths and what some of the negatives are in that. But we have been involved in some situations where, one example was a school district where the board really had to, because of the relations in the district and a lot of mistrust and such, really felt they needed to involve others in that process. And so we designed a method for doing that. And in that case, the board had the president of each of the employee organizations interview separately. We had another situation where we had, this was a little unusual, a panel of 30 people interview the candidates. There were some real challenges in that. For some obvious reasons. But in all those cases, so we've had the examples of having 3 people involved or having 30 people involved. We talk about confidentiality, and that's a real issue. And it's not that we don't trust, in some some boards have said, well, we'll have people write out a thing they will not give out the names. We say, no, we don't mistrust your people. It's the candidate's perception of this. So we have involved teachers. One example I have to tell you is a district where it was a school district where I had lived. My 4 kids had gone to high school. My wife had worked there as a teacher. Great mistrust. There had been a strike. It was just a very negative situation. When we met with a group of the teachers organization, members of the teachers organization, and it was quite an interesting meeting. And they said, we understand that we will not be involved in the interviews. I said, and they were very angry at the board for that. I said, I have to tell you, that was our recommendation in this circumstance, because the board has to take ownership and feels they have to take ownership. And, but it's our recommendation to the board. They said, but we've always been involved in that selection process. And I said, I've lived here for 10 years, and you've never supported the superintendent that you've helped to select. That kind of shut them up for a while. And I have to tell you, the board stuck with not involving them. One of my, this person has been there for 10 years now. One of my kids' wife's daughter-in-law, parents live in that community, very active, and they said, Steve, this guy has turned the whole district around. And the teachers came together. So it really depends upon the situation. So in one circumstance, we did involve, others we didn't, and it depends on where you are.
That's great. Thank you. So we'll now.
Want me to repeat?
I know, right? So at this time, we'll basically take questions, follow-up questions from board members, and what I'll do is probably start from what is this arm? My left. Member Simon. If you have any follow-up questions, we can start with you. What our experience has been, and both as superintendents and superintendent candidates, as well as going through this process, is if it's going to be an open process, candidates need to know that, because some people will not apply because they worry about what that will do to their reputation in their school district. And we've had people who've gotten all the way down to the end, and we've told them at the beginning that this is the parameters. There will be a panel in addition to the school board, and they say I don't want to do that. I said, well, then we can't go forward with it. So we've had that. Normally it's up front. They'll say, well, I'm concerned about my reputation in my school district because only one person, I may be a great candidate, but only one person is going to get that job, and so they worry about the repercussions. That is mainly for people who are sitting superintendents. If you're an assistant superintendent or a principal applying for a job, my first job that I applied for 2 superintendents before I got my first one. I was an assistant superintendent, and they had a panel of people interview. And frankly, I was fine with it because I felt, number one, if I didn't get the job, that's kind of a feather in my cap anyway because I got to the interviews. And if I do get the job, I have a panel of people who are going to be supportive of me. But I know there are people who feel differently about it. And that's something that you have to determine. So that's the downside. The upside is
there are some reasons we found over the years in some school districts why it is advisable to bring people into that process. So that's something we discuss with the board, and we'll design it in a way that where we try and maximize the confidentiality, to maximize the candidates, but that's still one of the downfalls.
What are those?
Pardon?
What are those?
For bringing other people into the process. Where we have done that is in districts where there's been a great deal of distrust, and between maybe the school board, teachers, community members, and that those boards felt, one way of doing this is to get some ownership up front in our process. The other is where they have felt that there hasn't been a great deal of transparency, and in that way people could see the process that the board was going through. In another case, one case I remember, the board, the prior time, we didn't do the prior search, selected someone that was never supported by the school district. And the next time when we came, they really wanted to involve some people. So they had another panel of about 10. And that person, greatly successful. And I think in part it was successful because he came in with some built-in trust, because people saw what the process was like. In other cases, boards say, hey, this is our responsibility. If things go south, we're the ones that are going to have to take care of it. It's our responsibility. And so there's no right answer. If you hire us, we'll talk more about that. But there are pluses and negatives on that.
Great. Other questions? We have about 2 minutes.
Yeah, I apologize for being late. Caught up in Sacramento. And maybe you covered this, but on the, so I apologize for that too, but do you have in mind that in the RFP we put very specific parameters around the meeting engagement issues and what we were thinking for? And it was more than just a panel of community members, so that was part of it. There was also preliminary community engagement on, building out the scope of what the kind of superintendent we want. There was meetings with different segments of the community, business, et cetera. I don't know if you have that in mind, or if you...
As your colleagues have heard, that's one of the highlights, I think, of our searches.
Okay.
That we asked the board in one of our first meetings, tell us about your school district, and who should we meet with? So, because we don't want to come in with kind of a boilerplate. Well, meet with X, Y, and Z, because the last job, those are the categories we met with. We want you to tell us who to meet with. In some communities, the members of the faith community are very important, and the board wants us to meet with members of the faith community. Other districts, they really want to emphasize, because they need to build relations with the city. They want us to meet with the city leaders and elected officials. So we ask you to tell us who to meet with. We then meet according to a schedule that we work with the staff in developing. And I was mentioning earlier, we did San Lorenzo, and we started at 8 o'clock in the morning on several days, and our last meeting ended at 8 o'clock at night. So we met with a lot of people in small groups. We want to meet in small groups, and we want people that are alike in many ways, so they feel comfortable in talking to us and expressing themselves. We don't ask for their names because we want people to feel that they can express themselves. And you're all wonderful people, and you probably couldn't imagine anybody be intimidated. But people are intimidated by a Board of Education. And no matter how great you are, they just start to say, well, geez, if John's going to get this information, what could possibly happen to me? And it may not, that'd be the farthest thing from the truth, but that's the way people feel, so we want to maintain confidentiality. So I think, again, the strength is is our ability to get people to come to these meetings to express themselves. Also, we do a survey on your website so that people who can't make it to a meeting, and then you get all of that information. And only because this is fresh in my mind, it was about a 43-page report of all the input that we received, that we provided to the board in San Lorenzo. And so we tell them every single word that people have expressed. With one exception, there was one district, and I just didn't feel comfortable putting that particular word on the board, so I put some other things up there. But other than that, every word that people say, we provide to the board.
And is that all included in your quote?
Yes,
in
it
your
is.
price?
Yeah. Our price, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is we've reduced it in recent years because of reality out there and what you folks have suffered. It's one price. There are no additions to that. That's it. So we don't come and say, if you want XYZ extra, that'll cost. That's one price.
And we have, I'm just going to say, we have one last question, and Member Nguyen will handle that
This
one.
answer is quick. What was the total number of applicants that applied for the San Lorenzo job?
It was a small number. We had 18.
Okay.
And mainly because of the time of the year that I explained early.
No, but that's
But
what
high quality.
okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's really been an honor to listen to your presentation. Appreciate you stepping in and being present this evening. So what the board, of course, will do after the conclusion of our interviews in the first section of our agenda is then to deliberate and consider selection of that candidate or that firm this evening. So
Great. Thank you. It was an honor for me to be here with you, and I appreciate it. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
thanks again. Real quickly, I'll just write down names. I have a little different form because there's one question I've added as a request.
Test.
So Josh, the first one, just kind of going that way.
Yep, I'm good.
We're waiting
Where's
for the
mine?
next group. Let's do that because Brandon's right on me. You have to be part of it, man. Thank you.
turned
We're gonna actually pause for a few minutes while the next group sets up. Thank you.
So you give me a last one?
Yes.
All right.
All right. So we're continuing with search firm interviews. And our next firm to make a presentation, and what will happen is the board will receive a presentation from HYA, and we have a number of pre-written questions, and you have them there as well for ease of reference. And in addition, any follow-up questions the board will ask it after that section. So, thank you. It's yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to apologize in advance if I break out coughing. My granddaughter gave me a wonderful case of bronchitis, and I'm recovering, but I'm not contagious, I promise. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to you tonight. My name, as I introduced myself, is Bill Levinson. I've been working with HYA for the last 7 years. I've done 17 superintendent searches over the years, the most recent were Sausalito and Marin City last year, in Marin, and also San Leandro. Both districts, one very large, one very small, but in many ways, lots of similarities with the Emery School District. I'm here with Ardella Daly, recently retired, not so recently guest anymore, Superintendent of Alameda, also served as Assistant Superintendent. Just up front, this is her first search. She'll be working with the firm. What I know about superintendent searches, she knows 4 times as much when it comes to knowing people all throughout Northern California. And we're really relying upon her knowledge and expertise in instruction as well as the work that she does with ACTS and working with the superintendent. So we feel that we're a really solid team to work with you. HYA has done 900 searches over the last 10 or 15 years. We've done about 60 to 70 in California. Even though we're a national search firm, most of us are local, and we do all the work locally, pretty much. Recently, I had the opportunity to read the proposals of all 6 of the search firms that are doing work in Northern California. And what I discovered is that probably 90% of what's being done is pretty similar among the school districts. So rather than going through all of that, I thought I'd just pick out some of the things that I think are particularly unique about HYA's process, or things about our process that I think are really worth exception as well. We have a national website, which means that candidates from all over the country know about our website, and they can access not only the application process, but also from our... I'm sorry. Not only can they access the HYA website, but they can access your website as well as completing the online application. Because it's an online application process, we are able to monitor the applications as the candidates are working their way through them. If we feel that we think they need a little help or a little encouragement, then we pick up the phone and give them a call. At the end of this process, when the board is interviewing or when you're doing your selection for the slate, if the board wants to read all the applications, we give you a number, and you can get on there and do it yourself if you want to. We have an advertising package that we do, which can range from as little as $200 to as high as $4,000. We tailor-make it to your needs. If you want to do a national search, we help you identify the vehicles to communicate the search. If you want to do it locally, it all depends upon what you want. We spend about 2 to 3 hours with you in our initial planning meeting, going over all the details, and we make those decisions with you at the time we're doing the meeting. One of the key things that we do is we have our leadership profile report. Each of us will spend 2 full days in the district, including evening meetings if necessary, where we meet with individuals and groups that you as a board have identified that you would like us to meet with. And we ask everybody 4 questions, whether it's an individual or a group. We have separate meetings with you as a board for about an hour each person. We ask, what do you think are the strengths of the school district? What do you think are the challenges the next superintendent will face? What are the qualities and characteristics you're looking for in a new superintendent? And do you know anybody who you think might be a good candidate? We gather all this information and we report it back to you in our leadership profile report by the groups that you identify. Staff, sometimes if it's a larger district, it's classified in teachers. There's a section for board, parents, and community. We also make available to you, for every single person in your district, parent, teacher, community, a online survey, which we have identified 25 leadership qualities that are research-based from ECRA, where we ask people to read through those, identify their top 8. And then we pull this together in a report, comprehensive report, and we present it to you. This is all public information. We also, based upon the results of our survey and the results of our interviews and conferencing, we come up with a recommended leadership profile for you to approve, and we use that profile to help us do our recruiting. And Ardell is going to talk a little bit more about recruiting later. We have a kind of a unique interview process, which I think is a little different. The first part of our interview is that we do a screening interview. Ardell and I will look at all the applications that are online. We'll identify what we think are the 10 or 12 best candidates who most closely match the criteria that we developed in the leadership profile with you. We invite them off-site to a 30 to 45-minute interview where we can meet them, ask them pertinent questions based upon our knowledge of the district, and after doing a little reference checking, determine who we think are the top 5 or 6 candidates, and we recommend those candidates to you as a slate for you to interview. The second interview is a board interview. It's about 2 hours long, an hour and a half long. We help you develop a series of questions, usually about 15. It's a very long interview. All the candidates, usually 5 or 6 that you're interviewing, are asked the same questions. It's a formal interview, but it gives you an opportunity to really hear what these candidates have to say asking them all the same questions, and it's really a powerful experience. Unlike other firms, we do not sit in with you during this process. We work with you to develop the questions. We have a workshop helping you prepare for the interviews, but we do meet with you after the completion of the 5 or 6 interviews, and we do a debriefing with you, helping you to identify the top 2 or 3 candidates. We always recommend that you go to 3 for the final interview because somebody will drop out and you really want to have a choice. Our second interview, our third interview, the second with the board, is sort of unique to HYA. It involves a cycle of the board, 2 members of the board conducting a tour of the district with the candidate A in the afternoon, followed by a interview dinner with the candidate, which is much more informal. We help you develop the questions if you want, but usually if the board develops their own questions. And it's a much more informal give and take. The following morning, there's an informal coffee with the board president and another board member where the candidate is asked to present to you what their fiscal expectations are to come to the district. It's not a negotiation session, but it gives you the sense of what it's going to be. Then the second night, it's candidate B. The third night, candidate C. At the end of the coffee for the third candidate, usually on a Saturday morning, we come in, we meet with you, we do the debriefing again. Usually by that time, the board is pretty unanimous about who they want. We hope they're unanimous, but sometimes it's a pretty lively conversation, but almost always the board makes a determination as to who they want for the superintendent. We help you go through the process that you need to offer the contract. We do a due diligence report is available to you, so you can test whether the successful candidate has accurately completed their degrees and all that kind of stuff. The process really works well, and one of the reasons why it works well is we do, I think, a really outstanding job of recruiting, and I'm going to ask Ardella to talk a little bit about the perspective of it.
I think one of the things that I add to the team is that I'm very current in terms of AXA, which is the state organization. I currently am director of the Academy for Aspiring Superintendents, and I have been for the last 4 years. So I have seen an influx of people and have a network in terms of potential, as well as I've been very active in the AXA African American network that exists for AXA, and NASB, which is the National Association of Educators. So, as well as the Latino Association, because we, the African American and Latino group of AXA, have come together. And in fact, in March, we're going to have a joint conference that we're sponsoring. So I have within California lots of ways to reach out. And I think that's very important for what you need. And being here in Alameda, been a neighbor and have worked with all your previous superintendents as a superintendent in the Alameda County group. So I have a real sense of this district as well. And personally, I have nieces and nephews that attend this district. So I like being called in to do this particular district because I think that you're a district that has some real potential for our kids. And I think in reaching out to people, that's what I can express to them. And of course, we have our national networks, as he mentioned earlier, and reach out beyond California that's available.
What's the question? Do you want me to go through them, or?
So we'll pose the question in case there's any augmentation at this.
Feel free.
So, and we're going to start with one board member and work our way down.
All right, so let's start out with what, it sounds like you're particularly well acquainted with our district, so I very much appreciate that, and want to know what do you think will attract a superior candidate to our district?
I think as a district, you've positioned yourself well with community resources and a community network that potentially can be built upon, basically. You've got a strong base there. And a superintendent, especially for a district of this size, it offers you the opportunity, whether you're stepping new into it or you're kind of at a place in the superintendency where you want to take it all on and have some real control of things that happen in the district, you offer that as a district. You're a challenge. You have an achievement gap you have to address. We're addressing it all over the state. They can be successful here, and if they can, it's a win-win for them. So I think what you sell is what you have already built, and the need to have somebody take leadership of that and move it forward.
Let me add that the benefit of the profile report is that the entire report is online. And so it identifies your strengths, your challenges. It's a pretty transparent document. Sometimes a little painful for people, but also it oftentimes really validates what you already know about the district. That really helps candidates who are interested in coming to the district understand what the district is about. The idea is to attract candidates who match what you need and what you want and who you are as a community. And we spread our net far and wide. And the more they understand the truths about the district, the better and more likely it is you're going to get candidates that are going to work for you. And that's really what you're looking for, are people that want to be here because they understand who they are, who you are, they know who they are, and they know that what they have to offer, their skill sets, their leadership skill sets, match what your needs are.
How will your firm...
Try this one.
Sure. Take two. How will your firm approach the search in light of what you know about the initiatives of the board and the district and the educational challenges facing our district?
Well, going back to what, excuse me, what Bill said, what's most important is that we are very honest and present what the district is about and get from you in terms of the board interviews and the community input what this district seems to want and need, and also what the district has to take on. Sometimes that may be, you want this, but you still have to take on a piece. And so identifying all of that, putting it together, and being very straight with your candidates about it. Part of our process in the pre-interview is to give them that profile of the district and make sure they understand this is what you're applying for. Can you do this job? Not a job you want to do, but the job that the district needs done.
Yeah, one of the things that we try not to do is to make assumptions about the district before we actually get here. Now, Ardella knows quite a bit about the district, quite frankly.
Please speak
I'm
to the
sorry.
mic, yeah.
Ardella knows quite a bit about the district. Frankly, I don't know very much about the district at all. What I will learn from having the interviews with you as a board and having the interviews with all the people that you have identified for us to interview is I will have a much clearer understanding after that what the strengths are, what the challenges are, what the qualities are that people are looking for. And the beauty of the online survey is that you can have 500 parents, every single staff member, 200 people from the community can respond to that survey. That gives us also a tremendous amount of information. So, for instance, one of the things that I do know from reading your website is you have some facility kinds of issues. Well, that gives us information that helps us look at applications. By the way, our applications have lots of open-ended questions, so you get a sense of whether the person can communicate in writing. We can ask questions that are comparable to that in our screening interview, and then we can help you, guide you to the kind of questions you would want to ask candidates on your first and second interviews based upon what we know and also based on what we've learned from the screening interview, as well as from reference checking. So the process informs us and it helps us guide you and the district into the kind of questions that you'd want to ask to get the best results from the candidates.
Thank you.
Okay, which of your recent clients are most similar to Emery Unified School District, and how did you help them successfully procure a new superintendent?
Well, the last search that I did was Sausalito, Marin City. It's about 500 students. Half the students go to a charter school, half the students go to the K-8 public school. Good percentage of the Marin City community goes to the charter. It's a very complicated and very diverse district, even though it is extremely small. They had a long history of having real problems obtaining a superintendent. And my partner and I, Barbara Young, worked with the board and helped them identify a way to have a part-time superintendent that would pay enough to be able to attract a really quality person. And in fact, $165,000 for 0.6, not bad. The board told the community if it was 1.0, it would not have been $300,000. But they felt that they wanted to front load the salary in order to attract a good person, and they attracted from Southern California a gentleman who has children up here in Berkeley and wanted to be up closer, for whom Sausalito Marin City was going to be his fourth superintendency. So they were able to bring in a really outstanding person. And we helped them develop that strategy and how to communicate that strategy to the community. And so far, it's been 4 or 5 months, and it's going really well. The other district that I did last year was San Leandro, a district that had some issues with their superintendency over the years. Very strong teachers union. It's a very, very labor-strong community. And we worked very carefully with the board, listened very carefully to what people on the staff talked to us about, what their real issues were. And we were able to identify a candidate with a very strong background in a district very similar to San Leandro. Mike McLaughlin, who went in there from John Sweat. Very much smaller district, but very similar in some of their issues, especially with diversity and whatever. So in some ways, while San Leandro has 8,800 kids and Marin City Sausalito has 500, they share the diversity issue that you have in your district, or challenge that you have, or attribute, in fact. And they also, both of those districts have huge problems with achievement gap and need to really raise the academic performance. And I know that's something that you guys are really committed to. So, and Ardella's work, she's down there, been in the trenches much more recently than I have in terms of really doing the work. So she brings that level of expertise to this.
Thank you. All right. How we customize community engagement and recruitment efforts in light of the district's engagement parameters in the RFP and the community's diverse population.
Yeah, I would say that there's a big challenge and trade-off in this business, and I'll be very honest about it. I've done 17 searches. None of the searches had a community committee. They were all closed searches that the board hired the superintendent and then informed the community who they hired. In some of the districts, nobody paid a bit of attention. Some of the district, the teachers were very upset. Some of the people in the community were upset. They had the chance the last time to participate. They felt that things were being taken away from them. And what we said to them, and the third search that I did last year was in Belmont, Redwood Shores, where the teachers were really very angry at the board about the process, whatever. And what we said to them was, look, the proof is in the pudding, okay? If the board hires a superintendent that doesn't work, then go after the board. But it's the board's responsibility to make a decision as to who should be the superintendent of schools in the school district. So from my point of view, we offer two major ways to get tremendous amount of community input. The first way are the 2 days each that we're here in the district, We can see a lot of people, a lot of groups in those 2 days. We also have one evening meeting scheduled, so anybody can be invited to come. So when we do this, we oftentimes see up to 200 people. So we're getting a cross-section of input, asking the same 4 questions. By the way, those recommended names that people give us, question number 4, we follow up on every one of them. The second way is through the leadership survey. Every teacher, every classified person can participate. Every parent can participate. Everybody in the community, every board member, everybody in the business community, anybody who wants to can go online and complete the survey and give us input. So in the end, there's always a trade-off for a board, and I understand this absolutely. Boards want to be participative, they want to be transparent and open. The problem is threefold when you open it up. First is, no matter how small or select the committee is, you cannot guarantee confidentiality to the candidates anymore. One of the first things candidates always ask is this a confidential search? Because if you are an assistant superintendent in Berkeley or in Alameda or Castro Valley, you really don't want everybody on your board, everybody in your community to find out you're out searching for a job. Because you may be really good at your job and you may really love that job, but you really would like to be the superintendent of Emery. So you put people in a position that they're going to risk something, and you get the end result of that is, quite honestly, you get a weaker pool. And I'm saying that to you. I've got the experience in this. I'm saying to you, you'll get a weaker pool. Some of the search firms won't do the search if they have to have a community committee because of their experience knowing that it kind of waters down the process. The third reason why it doesn't really work well is, how do you really pick a person on the committee? Do you have 700 kids? Do you have 700, what's the ratio? 700 parents to 60 staff members? Do you have 10 parents and one teacher and one classified? And if you have one administrator and you only have 8 administrators, you kind of lose the proportionality, and in effect, you empower groups or individuals to participate in a decision in a way that's really your responsibility as a board. And if I come across a little strong on this, it's because I'm 71 years old. I was 23 years as a superintendent. I've done 17 searches, and I've learned some things along the way. So my encouragement to you is to keep it to the 3 interviews that we identify: the screening interview, the first interview with the board, and the second interview, which includes the dinners and whatever. And by the way, that dinner cycle, if you talk to board members from districts that have done the HYA, they will tell you at first thought, they said, oh my God, 3 dinners in a row. It's the most powerful part of the search process. Because people who come across a certain way in that formal interview, when you get them in the informal interview, that's when you make the connection with the person. And that's when the person, the candidate, makes the connection to you. And it's very powerful. And that's one of the reasons why so few people who are hired through the HYA process leave. That's why we can have the 2-year guarantee, because it's a pretty successful process.
Thank you, Glenn. Our next question?
Well, I think you've covered a lot of the next question. So, I would just say, is there anything that you want to add in terms of, what unique strategies that you would bring?
Sure.
If not, we can go on to your teacher question.
Well, one of the things that we do is we put together, we don't do a brochure anymore, nobody does that, but I put together a kind of a brief summary of the search, and we send it out to people that we know around the state, letting them know that we're doing the search, telling them a little bit about the school district, asking them to let us know if they know anybody who they think might be good, and to pass it on to other people. And I should say, by the way, boards often ask me, well, how do you really find people? Truth is, I have no idea how it's going to happen. Sometimes it's from EdCal, sometimes it's from EdWeek, sometimes they go to the HYA website, sometimes it's somebody who's recommended through the leadership profile process. There's no way to tell. So we encourage boards to cast the net as wide as possible. And you're likely to snag somebody who's going to be really good at it and meet your needs.
Well, I just have one final pre-written question before we open up to follow-up questions. And I think we have, how many minutes left? I lost track, sorry. So we have about 15 after this question, which is if you could describe previous efforts in engaging teachers in the superintendent selection process, which we've kind of hit already, but would there be any other words of wisdom you'd probably include there?
Only that it's the interview that you have with the leadership is very powerful. For one thing, when gray-haired guy comes in, I'm reasonably personable. Sometimes they come in a little bristly, depending upon what's going on with negotiations at that particular time. And then we sit down and have a conversation. The structure of asking the 4 questions really helps a lot. And the teachers will be, and it's true with classified administrators as well, will be very honest about what the real issues are. And that's hugely informative. When teachers tell you that they haven't had a raise in 7 years, and it's really hard to get excited about, implementing new standards, when they're going, farther and farther back financially, you get a clear understanding of what kind of superintendent needs to come in to be able to let the staff know that he or she really understands who they are and where they are, psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, while still providing the leadership that the district needs. So those interviews are very, very powerful for us.
Thank you. Now, if board members have follow-up questions, and maybe I'll start here with, to my left again, with Member Simon.
So thank you. This is very helpful and informative. I hear your concern about public process for the finalists and having an open search, and I truly understand the downside. At the same time, we are concerned about how to bring together our candidate and have a sense that that people can meet at least the final 2 finalists and give feedback to the board. Have you done that in past searches, and have you seen ways that kind of building consensus or providing feedback to the board from community panel, which is what our district has done for all of our searches?
So, not to be facetious, but how has that worked out for you?
Sometimes good, and sometimes not so good.
Right. So here's the problem when you have 2 people. One is you have to select the 2 people, and there are issues, political issues, that come with how do you select those 2 people. Suppose you have 4 people or 3 people or whatever, and all 3 of those people think candidate X is the best person possible. And these people who you're going to select for this committee are likely to be important people, leadership people, powerful people, people that people look to. And you as a board, you think candidate Y is a heck of a lot better. What are you going to do? You're going to hire candidate Y, knowing that you're kind of going against what your committee said. If you think that people in that committee are not going to tell anybody, it just doesn't work. There is no such thing as that kind of confidentiality. I'm sorry. And besides, you guys are of this community. I've read the backgrounds of each of you. You're solidly in this community. I don't know who else would have a better idea as to who would be a good person for this superintendent than you 5 people who are sitting on the board. You are the community. And I think that it's my opinion, it's based upon experience and also other HYA consultants that I work with here in California, that anything you think you might gain from it, the potential loss is much greater.
I have a logistical question. Your survey, is it offered in multiple languages?
Yes, you name the languages, we can pretty much come up with.
Excellent. And do you have any strategies to reaching a parent base that is sometimes not been reached out to?
When we do the when we do the schedule for the 4 days that we're in the district, we don't have to be, the 2 days she's there and 2 days that I'm there don't have to be the same 2 days, so we can actually do it over a 4-day period. So you have 2 schools, so we can work with you to come up with the schedule that's going to allow for the greatest opportunity for parent participation. In some schools, it works well to have it in the morning, some at lunch, sometimes after school, sometimes in the evening. We're completely flexible for those 4 days. And the fact that both of us live so close by, you know, if we did it over 5 days, you know, a couple of 2 half days, we could do that. We both have pretty flexible schedules. But if you meet with the parent club, you could meet with the parent club and the site council people all together, because when there are more people in the room, people are more comfortable sometimes using the different languages and talking to the principals about what are the strategies that they use that are most effective to get to the parents. And we do it that way.
I heard you say, I certainly heard you recommend that the process not be open publicly, and you said some firms won't take on anything but a closed process. Is HYA that kind of a firm, or?
Question is, you know, would I do it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I have real reservations about it. The reason why I have reservations is that we come with a 2-year guarantee. Is your board turning over in the near future? You have an election coming?
We don't know.
Next year.
It's potentially a 2-year commitment, and I don't think the process is as strong. So frankly, I would prefer not to do it, but there may be somebody else in the firm that might be willing to do it, but I personally would not want to do it.
Okay.
Just to be honest with you.
Very fair.
Yep, that's why I asked.
Any other?
Not at this point.
I just had a question about, and I'm not going to ask on that one. I think got it, but I was curious about the applicant pool that, in terms of California, you know, people outside of California, and how many successful plants have been, you know, from your firm to California schools, or and even if this area makes sense, but California at large. I'm curious. You know.
Yeah, I can. I'm monopolizing the responses because I've been doing this for a while. I think it's important to cast your net. You know, the idea is you want to hire a superintendent no more than once every 5 years. Okay, so if it costs you $20,000, you amortize it over a 5-year period, it's $4,000 a year to get a great superintendent. I think it's a good investment for the community. San Leandro, we advertised everywhere, okay? 8,800 kids. I'll tell you quite honestly, all the candidates were local. There were no costs for transportation for candidates. Ross, which I did 2 years ago, tiny little district, they had 3 candidates from out of state. Cost them $4,200 to put people back and forth. One candidate twice. They ended up hiring her. She's doing a very difficult district. They've had a lot of problems with superintendents. They hired this person. She's doing an absolutely great job. You never really know. There are many, many people who grew up in California, who worked in California, have moved to the Midwest, moved to the East Coast, and what suckers them back to California, of course, is the weather. You know, it's a beautiful place to live. And so there are quite a few positions that are filled by people who come from out of state. Almost all of them have some visceral, experiential connection to California. I know people get worried because California is such a weird state about the fiscal and everything. Every state today is weird about fiscal. So that's not really a big deal. So you may get 3 or 4 outstanding people from out of state, and you may get none. You just really never know. When we meet with you to do the planning, if you are under severe budget restrictions, and we talk about strategies to have the screening interview done by one of our consultants who's out of state, so that saves one trip. We've done Skype interviews, first interviews with the board, when people were, you know, we did a Skype interview 2 years ago with a gentleman who was in the Far East, which was an interesting one. But we're pretty flexible about trying to make it work.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, just one quick. How many total applicants did you have for the San Leandro job?
We had, good question, about 60, but maybe 40 were reasonable. And of the 40, we screened maybe 12. Sausalito, Marin City, part-time job. We had about 23, 24 candidates. We screened 8. It all depends. This is a job that is likely to attract a good pool because it's local. You don't have to move to be the superintendent of Emery. There's a wide area that you can commute here, although who knows what the commute's going to be in the future. It wasn't much fun coming across the bridge here. So, you know, you'll get a lot of assistant superintendents, you know, district office people who want to be the superintendent, and you'll have people from small districts who want to come here.
Thank you. Are there other questions? And we have 5 minutes. We have other questions from board members at this point? Nothing? Well, we want to thank you so much for presentation and allowing us to ask some clear questions and get some feedback. Has been very valuable. And what we'll do now is we have 2 more interviews to conduct, and after that discussion item, we'll move forward with the potential selection of a search firm this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you for coming.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll take a break and allow the next search firm to set up. Back in open session with the interview process for search firms. Before we start, we just have one announcement.
Yeah, I regret that I'm going to have to recuse myself from this discussion because of the potential perception of a conflict of interest. I don't think there's an actual one, but just to be sure, since the company I work for does quite a bit of work with the City of Oakland. So I'll be stepping out of the room, and I trust my 4 colleagues to make great decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. And so now we'll actually hear from Ray and Associates, and if you want to start, and we have microphones because we have if you wouldn't mind using that microphone there, yes, please. And he's standing there is fine for camera's sake, right? Great. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ricardo Medina. I work for Ray and Associates, and this is my colleague,
Noel Gallo. Let me introduce myself first, and Ricardo will make the presentation. I've been with Ray and Associates for the last 5 years as an associate, and I primarily get involved in California, New Mexico, and Arizona school districts doing a search. And I grew up in Oakland. I went to the Oakland schools, and I graduated from UC Berkeley, and I know a lot about you. I know the people that work with you. And I also had the opportunity to serve on the Oakland Board of Education for 20 years. And the gentleman's right that, I'm currently on the Oakland City Council. And so that does not interfere with what I do in education. And I'm here to answer any questions. But I've also not only been on the school board, because I had that perspective. The reason I'm working with Ray and Associates is because they wanted someone with a Board of Education perspective in California. And so they asked me to join. So I've been involved with Sacramento, Pasadena, the San Jose schools, Santa Clara County, and other school districts in California, including New Mexico and Albuquerque and so forth. But I do that, focus on education. And so with that, I'll let our superintendent make the presentation.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Noel. So we have myself, I'm a 35-year plus veteran of public education. I've served as a principal, teacher, principal, assistant principal, athletic director, assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent, chief academic officer, and superintendent in 3 different districts. And I'm currently living in San Jose, California. So Noel lives in Oakland, I live in San Jose. So we're very close by. We also have an additional colleague, Roy Grimes, who was a former board member like Noel on the Sacramento City Schools. Roy is African American, so he's also part of our group. And so we have 3 individuals that are in a very close proximity to you. Okay, but let me get through the presentation. All of you have this in front of you. The firm, Ray and Associates, is one of the oldest standing search firms in the business. They've been around for 38 years. We have the corporate office in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We have over 160 associates across the country. So we have a lot of contacts. We're able to help assist with recruitment. We have a high quality and a very diverse, group of search consultants like ourselves. Okay. The search process. Obviously, we customize the search process to meet your specific needs because we work with you, individual board members. We interview each one of you to help establish that superintendent profile and what it is, the qualities and characteristics that you're looking for in your next superintendent. We also meet with community stakeholders. We have an online survey. So when we're done and we have you, do the final kind of editing on that superintendent profile, what you're looking for, but you're also going to have a lot of input from community stakeholder groups. And we'll come in, we do community forums. Noel and I can speak Spanish, so we can work with your Spanish-speaking, population. If you want to have a specific, focus group in Spanish, we do that as well. Okay. We will work with you to develop the specific timeline in some of the materials you have. You have a draft timeline of what we would kind of recommend that timeline look like. If we are selected, then we will come in and have another meeting with you and iron out the details of the timeline to make it sure that it's going to meet your needs. Okay? We'll work with you to develop promotional materials, recruitment materials. We do strategic advertisements in-state, out-of-state, with national organizations, and I'll name some of them in a little while. We're very aggressive in helping recruit because we have over 160 associates across the country, and we have about eight of us that work, within the state of California. So whether it's just within the state or just in this area, or if you want to do a national search, then we have the resources to bring to bear to help you do that. In-depth candidate screening. We have a pretty sophisticated process that we go through to vet all the candidates. In any particular superintendent search, we get anywhere from 40 to 50 to 60 or more applicants. We have our own process with Ray and Associates that we go through to screen the applicants, and then we assign them to one of our associates, one of the 160 associates across the country, and we do an individual interview with each candidate, and we prepare a written report, and then we also do the reference checks. So when we come to you to look at presenting a slate of candidates, maybe 15 or 20 applicants from the 50 or 60 that applied, these are the 20 that we have gone through and recommended that you consider. You also have access to all 50 or 60 applicants. So you can decide for yourself, and then you tell us who you want to interview. Okay? So that's part of the process. It's a pretty sophisticated process that we use to get the background information on all of them. There's very few places that a superintendent or an assistant superintendent can work in this country that we don't know somebody that knows that person or knows that district or knows the kind of work that they do. And we've had some interesting, we just did the Berkeley search last year. I was involved with that. Noel was involved with that. A very, very successful search. I believe if you call those board members, they will tell you that they're very pleased with the work that we did, but we did a lot of vetting of those candidates because of what happened, with their previous search. Video interviews, written candidate reports. We're also doing video interviews, so when we present a slate of candidates to you, we will have video interviews with most of them, if not all of them. It's something new that we're doing. When we present, when you go past the, that process, presenting the semifinalists, we provide.
I'm sorry, just to clarify,
Yes, sir.
the video interviews how are they used in the process?
It's however you want to use them.
Okay.
We have that technology, that capability. So when we're doing the individual interview from Ray and Associates with a candidate, we're also going to ask them to submit to doing a video interview to respond to a couple of questions, so that you'll have an opportunity to see them responding to some questions.
And that's at what level?
Before you decide who you're going to interview.
So
when we
the
bring a slate
15
of candidates to you.
Yeah, the 15 or 16
Yes,
level,
yes.
not the 60 level.
No,
Got it.
no. So it's obviously too cumbersome
Yeah.
to do it with all 60 people. It's not cost effective for us to do that.
But you're saying we could click online and look at a few questions of 15 or 6, anyone from that
Yes.
group.
So you might be able to see like a 5-minute video on every candidate. So that's something new that we're doing. Board, when we do this, the board is provided with a candidate video interviews and written reports. The board will observe the candidate video interviews. We have a consensus building, so when you go through, let's say you have 15 candidates that you're considering, and you have to screen them down to interview 6 or 7, then we have a matrix that we use that helps you, kind of narrow it down and through a consensus building process with all the board members. Okay. We also then we'll work with you on the first round interviews. Again, you invite 6 or 7 people to come in for the first round. We work with you to develop the questions that you're going to ask. You go through the first round, and then we have another consensus building instrument that we use for you to rank the top 2 or 3 people that you want to invite back for a second round interview. Okay. And after the second round interview, you narrow it down to your top choice. And then we work with you, the board, in, whether vetting that candidate, doing a site visit, and then if you want help with, contract negotiations, we can also provide that service as well. One of the other things that we can do is after you've selected a superintendent, help you with the transition period when you are onboarding a new superintendent. If you want to have some board workshops, assessment surveys, self-assessment surveys, to help you kind of establish goals and directions, for the new superintendent, we can also assist you with that part. Now, that's the presentation that we have this evening. Again, Ray and Associates has been around for a long time. We have a very diverse pool of consultants that work with Ray and Associates that we are available to bring to your disposal to help you with your superintendent search. The rest of the information you have in front of you, we would be more than happy then to answer any questions that you have.
Great. Great, thank you so much. We actually do have a number of pre-written questions that each board member will read. And if you want a copy, I believe there should be a copy up there at the podium there, just for ease of reference. So I'll actually, I'll start off with the first question, which is considering the processes that you've undergone to this point, what do you think, what will attract a superior candidate to our district?
What attracts candidates is, most of us as educators, we went into the business of education because we want to serve. We want that opportunity. So you're looking for somebody that's going to be a good fit and a good match, for your particular district and your particular superintendent profile. We, help recruit candidates, and based on that profile, we're looking for people that are going to be a good fit and a good match for your particular needs and your particular district. Okay? So all I can tell you is that we will customize, that profile and customize the search to meet your individual needs as a district. Okay?
Okay.
You can have those.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Another question.
How will your firm approach the search in light of what you know about the initiatives of this board and district and the educational challenges facing our district?
Okay. Again, part of the process, if Ray and Associates get selected to do this search, we will come back and work with you on the schedule. We will come back and work with you to set up individual meetings with every board member to see what it is that you are specifically looking for in your next superintendent. And then we'll collect all that information and compile all that information and come back and share it with you and say, this is what we learned from you and this is what you're telling us individually and to help us build that profile. So we work with you individually and then collectively as a board to help decide and determine those characteristics.
One of the differences between Ray and Associates and the other firm is, one is we clearly recognize we work for you. So at the end of the day, you set the timelines, the dates for interviews, and also provide direction to us. We are a national recruiting firm, and so we have associates and candidates that we're doing Albany right now, right next door to you. So I think that one is not only do we have the pool to identify candidates, but at the same time, one of the reasons I'm here as a previous board member is I clearly understand your role that you're in and the responsibility that, the firm that you select, they work for you. And I think it's very clear the type, how you identify the candidate that you would like us to bring, that's the work we do, as opposed to us having a waiting pool, a list of people we know that we worked for before and bringing those people to you. And some firms do that, right? But we start from scratch based on what you're looking for, based on your timelines and deadlines to be able to meet. And I think that's the advantage that Ray and Associates has. Plus, they have a support staff. So they have staff in Iowa that are there Monday through Sunday that are actually involved in this search and other searches that you can access. So, whether it's through email, through phone, but they're available to you, where other firms, as an individual doing a consultant working for themselves. But Ray and Associates has a support group that you can access at any time to make any changes, additions, whether it's a timeline, or just getting involved in terms of getting the information on the screening process. So we're always available to you.
Is there, just as a follow-up to that question, is there anything either of you happen to know, since you both live in the Bay Area, about Emery Unified in particular, or maybe you did some research that can kind of informs how you're thinking about doing the search if you were...
Well, I know about your school district. I mean, I was there on this Oakland School Board when we worked out that arrangement with Santa Fe School. And I know your current superintendent when she was at Oakland Unified. And so I know in terms of, a good percentage of your student body are from Oakland. Right? So I clearly recognize that. But at the same time, I think, I know in terms of the growth in Emeryville, so I applaud you for that, in terms of the business development and the growth and so forth. And academically, I think that, you may have some challenges and you need a leader that will work with you to be able to get our student body to a higher level. I recognize that. So I think we understand your needs, but at the same time, we will work with you to clearly identify and set a profile of the candidate you're looking for. And that's what's very clear about Ray and Associates. We're not going to come here and dictate and tell you who and what the person should be all about, that's really on the board. And at the end of the day, it is the board's decision in terms of identifying the top 3, 4, 5 candidates that you would like to interview. Then you make the selection, and we're just there to help facilitate that process. But I will tell you what Ray and Associates does is that for some reason you hire a superintendent and that individual does not work out within the 2 years, then we will come back and do the search free to get that, and if you need a replacement. So we do that at no cost to you. So there are many advantages of working with Ray and Associates. Plus, at the same time, we're really close by. And so we'll be able to commute back and forth, get to work directly with you, but the national office is available to you at any time. Okay.
Thanks.
Question is Miguel's. Thank you.
Okay. Which of your last clients are most similar to the Emery Unified School District, and how did you help them successfully procure a new superintendent?
Okay. In terms of demographics, one of the recent searches that we did was Berkeley, okay? They're a much larger district than you are, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of similarities between some of the demographics, okay? Besides Berkeley, we're doing Albany. Their demographics are very different than yours.
But their size is
the size is comparable.
Right.
Okay. So with Berkeley, their demographics were similar. With Oakland, their demographics were similar. With Albany, their size is similar. So because we do searches across the country, we normally do about 100 searches a year. And in the materials that we provided, there's districts with 500 students up to 50, 60, 70, 80. We're doing Baltimore right now with like 80,000 students. So we run the gamut from 800 to 80,000, and we have staff across the country to do that. And so those are some of the resources and capability that we bring to you.
All right. How will you customize community engagement and recruitment efforts in light of the district's engagement parameters in the RFP and the community's diverse population?
Okay. All right. Again, when we come in, you help us identify your community stakeholders. When we come in and we do focus groups, we normally have 10 to 15 to 20 focus groups. Your teachers association, your classified association, your bargaining units, your parents, your PTAs, PTOs, the business people. Each one of those is a focus group. It could be the Rotary, the Lions, Kiwanis. You tell us what your focus groups are. If there's a particular organization, in town, in this area, and they want to be involved in the process, you tell us who they are, and then we will work with you on scheduling all those individual stakeholder groups. And that's part of, we had a lot of stakeholders involved in the process in Berkeley, more than normal, but they wanted to make sure that we were involving all of their stakeholders in their community, and they have some unique stakeholders over there, and they wanted to make sure that we worked and addressed and met with them individually. So we meet with every focus group or every stakeholder group for an hour to an hour and a half, and we have a set of questions that we go through. And again, we're asking them questions about the superintendent profile. What is it that you're looking for? What are the strengths of the community? What are the areas that the superintendent is going to have to know? What are the challenges of the community? So we ask those kind of questions, and people are very honest with us. Your bargaining units are very honest with them, but we also meet with you individually, and we get information from you as well. So that helps us with the superintendent profile to customize the search to your particular needs. Okay.
Here's an outline of an instrument that we use to help you identify or narrow down the profile of the individual. Your stakeholders will fill that out.
Okay.
Yeah, so Ray and Associates has identified like 33 qualities or characteristics, and we use that as part of a survey, and we have people rank like their top 10. We'll give it to you to rank your top 10 characteristics also, of what you're looking for.
All the information comes back to you.
Yeah,
Is that survey made available online
Yes.
for people to
Yes, sir.
respond to? as well?
Absolutely.
What are the unique strategies that you think are unique to Ray and Associates that would, that you use to recruit candidates?
Some of the unique strategies, again, is the process that we use to interview every single candidate that we bring to you. When we present a slate of candidates, 15 to 20, we've interviewed them. For example, I'll take one or two candidates, and one of our other 160 associates, right, Noel will take one or two candidates, and we do like a 45-minute to an hour, phone interview with them. We have a set of questions that are customized to your school district, okay, based on what you're telling us you're looking for in your superintendent, okay? And then we provide a report. Then we also do the reference checks. All of that is provided for you when we come in and present the slate of 15 to 20 candidates for you to determine who you're going to interview. So we're unique in that regard. We're also unique with the video interview process. That's something that's new, that's different, that we're basically kind of just rolling out recently. And again, we're doing that no other superintendent search firm that I'm aware of is currently doing that. And then again, the diversity of our consultants. And again, we have prior superintendents to school board members. And
see, what the video does for you is, besides being just, here's an application.
You need the mic.
Here's an application, this is his profile. You actually get to see the individual on video interviewing, his presentation, his articulation, his commitment. And I think it gives you a better sense than just trying to read about the candidate, right? So I think that, that's been really helpful, and that's something that we've done that's new. And it gives the board a greater sense on how you want to narrow it down, because you already, in many ways, saw the individual, or the candidate's presentation, and that's been really helpful for board members to clearly see the individuals. Well, you know what, I want these 7 or these 5, and so it moves the process along.
Well, I have one final pre-written question, and then we'll open it up for follow-up questions. And we have about, I'm sorry, I never prepare you guys for the clock, huh? So we have about 25 minutes for follow-up after this one last question, which is great timing. Excellent presentation. All right. No, you did it. Get to this part, the meat of it, right? So if you can, describe previous efforts in engaging teachers in the superintendent selection process.
Again, we meet with your bargaining unit, okay? Your Teachers Association is a very important, critical stakeholder group. So everywhere we go, we meet with your Teachers Association. We normally let them decide, what the teacher pool looks like, how many people that they want to be interviewed. It could be just their leadership. It could be their executive board. It could be just the union president. But beyond that, a lot of times we'll also have a focus group at one of the schools. We also want to talk to students, and normally in your high schools. Okay? So that's normally part of the process. A lot of times we'll go visit a school and say at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, all of the teachers that want to come in and provide, that's more like a public forum. So besides individual stakeholder groups, we also do public forums. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, anybody in town that wants to come to that forum, some of those are a forum specifically for your Teachers Association. And then there's other public forums, for example, at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. Again, you open it up and you invite the whole public. Sometimes we get 5 people, sometimes we get 100 people. So besides the individual stakeholder groups that I talked about earlier, we also do community forums and public forums. And we'll do some in the different languages if you have different language groups besides English and Spanish. Okay.
That's great.
And if you have like special education, if you have a committee, an advisory committee to you, or the English learners parent advisory committee, we make ourselves available to them as well.
That's great.
Yeah, obviously most districts have a DLAC, or you have a DAC, a District Advisory Committee, an English Learner Advisory Committee. So those are some of the stakeholder groups that we meet with. If you have a district advisory committee composed of parents, that's another stakeholder group that we meet with. Certainly, going back to your original question, your teachers association is a very critical stakeholder group, and we make a special emphasis to meet with them and even to have a forum that's unique to teachers in the school district.
Right.
If that's what you want us to do.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now we have opportunity for the next 20 minutes, if there are follow-up questions from board members.
Noelle, this is my first time going through a superintendent search, so I'm just curious, during your time that you sat on a board, how many times did you go through this process?
Oh,
and how do you
I
feel
heard a
that
good
is
number and I got rid of a couple too.
I'm just
Or I
curious
asked
how
some people to gracefully leave. It's the most important thing that you will do. And that individual that is your superintendent, that's your team player, your captain, right? And for me, it's the most critical, the greatest decision that you'll ever make, right? And I think so you take this process super serious. And I think in terms of whether it's Ray and Associates or whatever firm you decide to choose, is really going beyond their scope to bring you some talent or present you the talent. And I truly believe that right, Emeryville may only have a student body of 700 students, but at the same time, each one of those students has value. Right, and they deserve the best leadership they can get. And believe me, in this area, there are people that would come here, but I think you as a board need to demonstrate that you're open and willing to, to attract and bring in people. Now, the only thing that I will tell you is that to look at it, one is, you have a budget from the different firms. And I think one of the things about Ray and Associates is they're very flexible in terms of negotiating the activity that's being requested from you in terms of price. There's no need for the out-of-state travel because we're here. There's individuals in Sacramento, San Jose, and Oakland that would come to assist you. So you don't have to deal with that in terms of the advertising. Right, you can advertise on the EdCal and other publications, but Ray and Associates is already connected to whether it's the technology advertisement direction or the paper advertising. They're already connected to that, so they can actually, save you some cost in that area. But they're flexible to negotiating a budget to be able to meet your need in terms of a search. And I think this is where you have to take a close look at it. But I will say that they have access to our national pool. And so if you're really looking for someone at the national level, they'll make those doors available and open it up. And in every search that I've done, from little ones to big ones, at the average, they average 70 applicants. They get 70 applicants, and then we weed them down to then you start getting involved in terms of whether it's 20 or 30, bringing it down to whatever group you want to interview. And so it's an excellent, it's perhaps the most memorable opportunity that you'll have. So
I just have one
congratulations.
quick question to follow that up is, through your experiences of doing superintendent searches as a board member, how do you feel that those experiences will help you as now being on a search firm, on the search firm side of it?
Yeah. Well, why I came to Ray and Associates, because I know where you sit, right? And I used to sit at the other end, and what I'm looking for, usually you would have a search group that tells you how to do it, when to do it, and here it is. Here's the individual, take this person, right? And I think that in Oakland, the last experience we had is we really got into, we wanted the public to accept and own the individual that we selected. So we even had public forums where we invited the top 3 candidates to interview with the public. The student our student council facilitated the event. But the questions came from the public, right? And therefore there was that interaction, and we were able to sit back and able to see the superintendents in action. How do they treat your parents? How do they react to questions? So I think that's really open here. And so we're really going to work for you. I think you know the district best. And I think in the profile, you help define what the individual that you're trying to bring to Emeryville should be all about. And I think that's where Ray and Associates will work with you in any different way that you like.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
If I could kind of follow up on that thought. Noel was a board member with Oakland when Ray and Associates did the superintendent search, and I was part of the search firm. So after that, then he got interested in the search business and came to work as a consultant with Ray and Associates. We did something comparable when we did the superintendent search in Sacramento. Roy Grimes, our colleague, was the president of the board when we did the search for superintendent in Sacramento. And so again, after that, then he was recruited to come work for Ray and Associates as a consultant. So again, there's a couple of board members, board presidents, longstanding board members, both Noel and Roy, that have the board member perspective in terms of what Ray and Associates needs to do to deliver the product that's customized to fit your individual needs.
That's really helpful.
So that's a unique perspective that we have that most other search firms don't have. Yeah.
Thank you, that was very helpful.
One of the big questions is whether to make the process open or closed, at least for the last, you know, 2 or 3 candidates. And where does your firm and you gentlemen come down on that question, and, you know, what are the pros and cons, and how do you
There's
feel?
definitely some pros and cons, okay? I can tell you, I was a superintendent in the state of Michigan. That's one of the sunshine states, so that the whole process from beginning to end is open to the public. When you apply for the job, the names, you know, are listed in the newspaper. When you go to the first interview, the room is full with people, spectators, teachers, principals, you know, everybody. It's a completely open, you know, process, you know, part of what they call the sunshine, okay, rule in those states. Florida is like that. But as an organization, we also know that if it's an open process like that, for at least the first round interviews, that it has a tendency to limit the pool of applicants, the people to apply, who are already working somewhere else. They might be nearby. People are reluctant to let their current employer know that they're out on the job market, out looking for another job. It could be somebody next door, it could be somebody from out of state, but if the names get out to the press, and we did the search where in Pasadena a couple of years ago, one of the board members leaked the names to the press, even though it was a closed process. They listed, and then people backed out. As soon as the names hit the newspaper, they backed out of the process. So that has happened. It's happened a lot of different times. So again, but as Noel mentioned to you, in Oakland, they had the 3 finalists come in, and they did expose them to the public. So if you want to do that as part of the second round interview, and to have them present us that 2 or 3 people to the community, you can certainly do that. That's not as scary to them as opposed to the 50 or 60 that are going to be applying whose names would be leaked, or the people that you're going to interview on the first round interview. So to answer the question, I mean, there's pros and cons. Ultimately, it's your decision to make, but if you choose a completely open process, it will normally almost guarantee that it'll limit the pool of candidates.
Well, I guess, you know, I think a possible way I could see us potentially going is doing what you said about the finalists, 2 or 3. But that, you pretty much have to tell candidates at the front end.
Yes, yes.
And,
yes,
you know, it may have the same adverse consequence of limiting your pool, or maybe not so much. People think, well, I got a 50% or 33% chance.
Most candidates are willing to take that gamble when they get to be one of the 2 or 3 finalists. Okay.
That's helpful. And I'm glad you hit that one. I'm actually curious about, in terms of California, how successful has the firm been with finding or identifying candidates outside the state and placing them in in districts in California?
We recently did Santa Clara County Office of Education. The superintendent there now came from El Paso, Texas. The superintendent in Sacramento, when Roy Grimes was the president, came from out of state. Your superintendent, when you hired in Oakland?
Tony Smith.
He didn't come from,
he came from here.
So we run the gamut. I mean,
No, it's, what happened, he made reference to Santa Clara County, the superintendent. You have individuals that leave California and go out of state to get experience, and they come back. And this is an attractive area, so you do have people wanting to come back. There were Californians and went out of state. And so the Pasadena, he was right in LA, so a good number are from out of state. And I'm trying to think of some of the other. Ontario was right within down Southern California. Berkeley, I mean, Berkeley Unified, you know who he is.
Yeah, but
He started in Oakland, right, went to Compton,
Right.
Hayward.
So Don Evans, the superintendent in Berkeley, was in Hayward. Okay, so he was close by. If it would have been an open process, he probably wouldn't have applied because he was so close. Didn't want to risk it. Okay. Politically,
What was his position in Hayward?
he was superintendent in Hayward. He had only been there a year and a half.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So he applied because he knew there was a close process until the end, that at the end, there certainly was a risk that his name was going to get leaked, but he was willing to take that chance, and he was successful in that process. But Ray and Associates has a combination. I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but there's many districts that hire somebody from out of state, many districts that hire somebody from in-state. Berkeley hired somebody that was 20 miles away, who was a graduate of UC Berkeley. And so it worked out for them, but also in the applicant pool for Berkeley, we had probably more than half of the candidates that applied for that job, or about half, were from out of state. So when we presented a slate, and the people they interviewed came from around the country and from within the state of California.
Have any questions? Any other follow-up questions? Well, please, you have.
I have a closing comment.
Sure, that's
from
fine.
both of us.
That's it.
Okay. I mentioned, you have our profiles, our resumes in your packages.
Let me just clarify.
Go ahead.
Would you two be the primary people working? Were we to
I
hire
would
you?
probably be the lead,
Okay.
and Noel would be one of it'll probably me, Noel, and Roy Grimes, but probably the
Okay.
three of us
Okay.
would be the individuals working the search here. I have had the opportunity to serve with a National Latino Superintendents Association. I was actually one of the original founding members of that organization, along with Carlos Garcia. And Carlos Garcia and I were also the original founding members of the California Latino Superintendents Association back in 1997. So I've been involved at the state level, I've been involved at the national level. I've served on the governing board of the American Association of School Administrators. I've served as the president of ALAS, the National Latino Superintendents Association. I have served as director of a National Latino Superintendents Academy, so I've helped prepare superintendents, out of the first two cohorts that we ran, we've already placed, I believe, 10 superintendents in the first 2 years of the program. So I've done those kinds of things. I've served on the governing board with the American Association of School Administrators. So I have a national context, in some of the work, because I've also been a superintendent in the state of Michigan. So I've kind of gone back to Michigan and California in the last 15, 20 years. So besides those organizations, ALAS and AASA, American Association of School Administrators, we also work very closely with the National Association of School Black Educators, NAPSE. So we have contacts, we have consultants that work for us that are members of that organization, so that we work with the American Association of School Administrators, we work with ALAS, the National Latino Superintendents Association, and also the National School Black Educators Group. So we have those contacts, and that also helps us with the recruitment efforts to ensure that you're going to get a diverse, pool of candidates. So those are some of the additional the individual context that some of us have that we also bring, to you as an asset.
That's great.
Okay. Closing comment?
It'd be an honor to work with you. Certainly, I don't need to make any more comments, man. I think it's, I've sat there where you sat it, and I think it's time to say thank you, and good luck to you, and congratulations.
Well, thank you both so much for being with us this evening and giving us a presentation and having an opportunity to have a nice dialogue about the next steps ahead. But what I will say is that we have one final interview this evening. Following that discussion item, the board will then move into the selection process and hopefully move into coming up with an award to offer this evening. So, but thank you both for being here.
So on behalf of Ray and Associates, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and present this evening.
So much.
And we wish you the best of luck because we understand how important
Thank you.
this decision is for you.
Yes, it is. Thank you
With
so
this,
much.
with selecting of the firm and then with selecting of your next superintendent. So
Great, really
Good luck to you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And so at this time, the board will move into a recess and reconvene with the next firm in front of us. Superintendent search firm interviews, and with us now we have McPherson Jacobson.
McPherson and Jacobson, yes.
Thank you so much. And so I guess the point of this one now, we have 45 minutes with you, and what we'll ask you to provide the presentation. We'll follow up with pre-written questions that the board has provided, hopefully up there still on the podium to have ease of reference. And then we'll have follow-up questions, and that's where we'll start. So
Okay, I'll try to keep, you gave us 15 minutes, right?
15 minutes.
We'll try to keep our remarks, Molly and I, to 15, or maybe 10 minutes and give you time for your questions. First of all, Don Helms, Molly Helms, we are both retired superintendents. You were sent a packet from our office in Nebraska, and on page 23 and 25, I'm sure you've seen our resume. I think it's important for you and Emery Unified School District to know that both of us have considerable experience as superintendents in small school districts. We also have considerable experience in large school districts, and you're being a small school district, it's kind of nice to be home. My first superintendency was 500 kids K to 12. My last superintendency was 1,200 kids K to 8. In between, there was a district of 2,400 students K to 12, a district of 71,000 students K to 12, and a district of 25,000 K to 12. So we've been there, both of us. Molly, as you can see from her resume, was assistant and deputy superintendent in large districts, and also 11 years as superintendent in a small school district similar to yours. We represent McPherson and Jacobson, who are a national company out of Omaha, Nebraska. Now, I share this with you with some trepidation, because they are now becoming, and you will see the next time you see any information on us, on Don and Molly Helms, we will be the consultants for McPherson Jacobson, who is the search firm for the California School Board Association. This month, they have been entering, after a year of negotiations, entering into a contract. I shouldn't say negotiations. I think CSBA interviewed a number of firms, and during that time, they selected McPherson and Jacobson. We were recently recruited, I'm sorry, say that right, recruited, to be their search consultants with the beginning of their tenure in California with CSBA. I say CSBA with trepidation because I know 3 of you have been through superintendent searches before, and I know very well 5 or 6 years ago CSBA brought you someone whose credentials and background wasn't fully and correctly vetted, and that was a problem for you, it was a problem for CSBA, and they haven't done any searches since. Molly and I've been retired for 13 years, and during that time I've done some consulting, as again you can see in my resume, and I've also been doing superintendent searches, 13 years, all over California and a couple over in Nevada. Have enjoyed that immensely, and so the opportunity, and I have been doing those in the last 2 or 3 years in El Dorado County primarily, 6 of them, for the county superintendent of schools, especially for school districts that were having financial problems and couldn't afford outside consultants. So when McPherson and Jacobson, Tom Jacobson, who is the CEO of the company, called us and talked about what he was proposing and what we would be doing if his company was selected by CSBA, we said, yeah, we'd like to be part of that. We really enjoy helping boards find superintendents. We work for the board. We don't have a pool of candidates. We don't have superintendents that we move around. That's not what we do. That's not what McPherson and Jacobson do. Their philosophy and approach is transparent, involve as much community and employees as possible, customize the search to fit the needs of each individual district, and by that I also mean each individual board. 3 of you, having gone through this before, know what I mean. You've probably had some experiences that you'd like to avoid, and you probably have some that you would like to emphasize. And we're saying to you, Molly and I are saying to you, that we're going to customize the search, if we're selected, to exactly what you want it to include. Particularly, I want to have Molly speak for a moment about involvement of community and employees. Your sign up front says, partners power student achievement, and we believe in that too. And that's what this company believes in, and that's why we feel we're a pretty good match. If you don't mind, I'll turn the microphone over to my wife, and she can talk to you a little bit how we involve community.
Well, that's one of my favorite parts, so I hope I'm the one that gets to do that. We have 2 ways primarily that we involve the stakeholders from your community. And the first one is, and this is up to you to decide, but you know the stakeholders, the community, the business, the teachers, the administrators, the students, parent groups, and we can either do this separately and have each group meet with us, or we can do a combined meeting with those groups. And what we do then is summarize what has been said. We will be asking them to tell us the strengths of the district so that we're able to talk to that when we're recruiting people. We also want to know what are the problems and things that a new superintendent may have to deal with, just so we are keeping in mind as we look for people what that would be. And then the other thing that we would be looking for would be what characteristics are they interested in having a superintendent. And so those are the 3 things, and that will be brought back to the board. And the board will designate which groups they want and how they want them assembled. It can be all at once, or it can be individual groups. Then the second way in the transparency of this process is that the board will select representatives from these different groups to be part of a group that will interview the candidates and that will try to do things like encourage them to come to your district, because that's part of our job, is to make the district look good, and the people that can really make the district look good are the people that can say what are the strengths of the community and what are the strengths of the school district. And then they also would interview and see how each of the interviews go, and after each one they would develop a consensus of what they thought about that person. That's something that the protocol that McPherson Jacobson uses is whatever they have summarized on each of the interview candidates are put into an envelope and sealed. And it's something then is given to the board after you've done your interview, so that you'll get a different perspective, but you won't let it color what you're hearing. And so that's one of the things that we do. The other thing that I love to do, and that is work with superintendents after you've been hired. That's one of the things that I've been doing for the last 6 years since I retired, and I have mentored 4 superintendents in El Dorado County. I still have one now, and that's, the most fun is to help people. I can just be a a sounding board for what are they going to do, how is it going to go, but also work out the strategies, work out the plans for the future. What are the things you're going to really want to evaluate that person on? And I think one of the good things about the process that we're talking about is that McPherson Jacobson has a really incredible record as far as having superintendents stay with the district. I think you may have read in there, but within 5 years, they have 80% of the people are still in place in there. And you know, in California, it's like 3.5 to 4.5. In 10 years, they have 60%. In 15 years, they have 5%. So this is a very strong background for the district. I come from, most recently anyhow, small school districts. So I actually had two. I know Don said one, but I had Pollock Pines, which is one district with one board with about 800 students. And I had another district with 15 students. And they went all the way up to Lake Tahoe from my other district. And so they were just 15 students, and the board loved having that. The community loved having that school. And so it's still operating to this day. And with small school districts, one of the things that I was able to do, I was able to be a member of the board of directors for the Small School Districts Association, and I was that for about I think 6 years, and so that gives me access to small school districts. It also I continue to attend the various meetings and so forth, so I do meet all of the new superintendents and the older superintendents that I've known. There's something to be said for an experienced superintendent, and so we do have access to those as well as new ones. It's been my pleasure to talk to you. I'd be glad to answer any questions later.
We're batting cleanup here, we realize, and you're way over your time, and so I know you want to get
We're good.
home as quickly as you can.
We're committed.
This is early for our board meeting.
I'm sorry?
This is early for our board meeting time frame, so.
Good.
Oh, yeah? You want to play, can you top this? In 1978, Molly's talking about having 2 districts, 2 school boards, 3 and 5. In 1978, when I was recruited to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I had 14 board members. We met once a week. Meetings usually went from 4 o'clock until 10 or 11. They were fully televised live and then shown over the cable twice during the week. And one of the board members who, in the interview process, I was 38 years old at the time, and he came up and he introduced himself, and I'm trying to keep can you imagine trying to keep 14 names all straight at the same time? And he said, how old are you, son? I said, I'm 38. He said, I've been on this board 40 years. 2 years longer than I'd been alive. Anyway, back to your search. You know from firsthand experience, I can't emphasize this too much, because I know lots and lots of search consultants. Many of them are friends and former colleagues of mine. I've worked together on various committees statewide and all that. We came back to California in 1983. We've been here 30 years. I've been in 3 school districts in that period of time, 10 years down in Southern California in Corona, while Molly was assistant superintendent over in San Bernardino. And then I spent an interim over in West Sacramento, and then up to the mountains to finish our careers. And one of the things I think, there are 2 things: recruiting and vetting, that you should be extremely concerned about, and I know you know that, the vetting part of it anyway. I'd like to tell you also the last 6 superintendent searches I did, including last September, the last 6, 3 out of those 6 were candidates that I had recruited. Not candidates that I knew, but candidates because of my tenure in this state and the fact that I've attended all 30 CSBA conferences in the 30 years that I've been here, all 30 of the Administrative Association meetings. I meet regularly Northern and Southern California superintendents. I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to share with you that I have tentacles, if you will, out into a source of lots of good candidates. We haven't had time to really do any research about your district. We do know that you probably need a experienced superintendent. We do know that financial and fiscal times are hard, and that's a skill that is going to be important to you. We also know that HR, human relations, personnel is important to you. And one of the things I'm trying to emphasize with our recruiting ability is knowing superintendents and school boards throughout the state. Plus, I'm a guest lecturer in all of the AXA, most all of the AXA superintendents academies. And that is a good source. I don't necessarily mean someone who's in the academy now and who's not a superintendent, but who was in that academy 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, is a superintendent or is ready to be a superintendent right now. And because I'm a guest lecturer there, you can kind of pick out the ones that are strong and the ones that are not. The other thing is vetting. We read the letters of recommendation. We go down the list on their applications of the references they've put. But have you ever seen a resume that had a bad reference on it? I've done 60, 70 searches, something like that. Only once did I call a reference and have that reference say, "Oh gosh, don't hire that guy." They're all good. You wouldn't put them in there. So the vetting process that we do, and we have to do if we're doing our job to bring only good, strong candidates that meet the needs that you have told us and shared with us and we've learned from the community with you, we have to go far beyond what's on the resume. And we do that. Again, you look at someone's career and see where it's been. This person's not listed as a reference, but she happened to be a principal in so-and-so's district, and he's not listed as a reference. I know him. I'll call him up. He knows he can talk to me confidentially. And I don't want to talk to him unless they feel that they can talk confidentially. Otherwise, I won't really hear the things that I need to be able to share with you in closed session before you decide whom you want to bring in for an interview. Vetting and recruiting, that's our real strength. Molly's great with community, as she said. She's a much nicer person than I am. And maybe that's why she's good with the community. But we bring to you on behalf of McPherson and Jacobson these skills. We'd love to do your search. Your district is small. Our most recent, I don't want to go back to 71,000 in Baton Rouge or 25,000 in Corona. That's the reason I finished my career up in El Dorado Hills, not in El Dorado Hills, but El Dorado County, where we had a small district to work with, and you got to know everybody in the community, and they were there for the kids. The partnership that your logo says is what it's all about for what we've been doing. When you've got 16 high schools and 18 middle schools and 111 elementary schools, superintendent doesn't get to know the community very much. It becomes a political position and not a leadership position, the kind that I think that you want and I'm pretty sure you need. Questions?
Great. Well, we have, I always test you guys over there. How many minutes do we have? Okay, great. We have 25 minutes, so we have some pre-written questions each board member will read through, and then we'll have some follow-up questions and maybe a final comment from you guys.
Okay.
So, Member Simon?
What will attract a superior candidate to our district?
What will attract superior candidates to your district? Candidate who wants stability, who believes and knows the board is together. I'd like to say at this point that if we're your consultants, we're going to work real hard to get a 5-0 vote on the candidate that you select. We might be able to go with a 4-1, but if it's a 3-2, we are going to strongly recommend that you let us do it over again at no cost. We'll go out and recruit and And the other thing that I want to say to you is that your location here in the Bay Area is great for those who want to live where they have lots of resources and lots of interesting things to do. Just a very nice location, unless you happen to be a farmer and want to be out somewhere in the middle of the... So we would be recruiting for your location, we would be recruiting for your school district, which is a challenge, and we'd be looking for someone who really enjoys the challenge and someone who wants to come and stay with you, as our company has been very successful with.
How will your firm approach the search in light of what you know about the initiatives of this board and the district and the educational challenges facing our district?
One of the things that we must do if we're going to find good candidates for you is to get to know you as a board, get to know the strengths of your teachers, your administrators, and what's going on in the classroom. That's going to be one of our major and first challenges, because before we sit down with you to develop the characteristics, the professional and personal characteristics that you want as your superintendent, in your superintendent, we're going to have to be able to get to know you and the strengths and weaknesses of your district. We don't know that yet, but we will before we start talking to candidates, before we advertise, and before we put the brochures out online. We will know what it is that you need. We'll know what it is that you don't need, where you already have a whole lot of strengths and you want to direct your efforts to approach and solve the problems that you're facing. And every district in California has got all kinds of problems right now. You know, but has better than I do. And so that's how we would approach that. We would have to get to know you. We would want to get to know you. We will get to know you and your community. And that will help us with the recruiting, and that will also help us bring candidates to you that are suited for your district. You know, there are two different things that go on when you bring candidates in for a school board to interview. Do they have the strengths? Do they have the background? Have they had experience in the issues that you're facing? And the other is the magic, if you will, the personality, if you will, between you and those candidates. Is this going to be a good fit? Are you going to work as a team? If you are a team, is this person a team-oriented person, or is this the kind of person that just wants to have you set the goals and then they want to just report to you at your meetings about all the things they've been doing? Now, Molly and I don't know you well enough yet to tell you exactly what we're going to be looking for, but that's how we're going to find out.
Okay, which of your most recent clients are most similar to Emery Unified School District, and how did you help them successfully procure a new superintendent?
As I mentioned, the last couple of years, I've been doing searches in El Dorado County for the county superintendent. Prior to that, however, I guess the closest similarity in districts would be West Sacramento. It's an urban district. Benicia, Martinez. I ran into a school board in the School Boards Association meeting down in San Diego last week that was on the Martinez board, and their current superintendent was there, and we got to talk, and I said, you know, I did your search a few years back. When was that? I said, well, you selected John Triolo. He was so good. We really loved it. So Martinez, Benicia, of similar, let's put it, non-rural kinds of districts. The last 5 searches I've done have been rural districts up in the mountains, and not a suburban or urban district. But I have done them here, Southern California, San Diego, both in small and in larger districts. I did Fairfield several years ago. I did San Juan Capistrano and Newport Beach. Those are not exactly the same they're much larger and they're not the same clientele. Interestingly enough, though, Newport Beach, you think of Newport Beach, if you've ever been down, you think of Balboa Island and all those yachts and all that sort of thing. Yet over half of the student population in Newport Beach are Latino, English learners, and the issues that English learners face is a big issue for them in Newport. It's Newport Mesa, Newport and Costa Mesa. So those are the ones that I would suggest are the most recent.
Okay, great. How will you customize community engagement and recruitment efforts in light of the district's engagement parameters in the RFP and the community's diverse population?
Well, part of it will be up to you to help us know what are the constituent groups that you definitely want to have represented, and we'll proceed from there. Now, the first meeting can be one big meeting with all of your constituents at it, or it can be separate ones where we would meet with teachers, we meet with administrators, we meet with students, we would meet with community, business, and so forth. So it would be up to you to tell us how you would like to do that. Then the same groups would be part of the input group that would interview your choices of candidates and give you the sealed envelope that you could see later, so you would know how your community felt about that. And so that would be down to like 8 to 12 people, depending on how you felt about how many people you wanted to do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What unique strategies do you think that McPherson would bring to help us recruit a top-notch candidate?
Well, I think two things I can think of right at the top of my head. One is that they are a national firm, so they have access to people all across the country that possibly would be someone that you would want. But I think their involvement with CSBA is a big factor, because this will give them credibility with people who might apply or might not apply. And so I think that those two things would be particularly important. Don, what can you think of?
I think that we, Molly and I, whose experience are pretty much limited here to California and a couple of districts in Nevada, we would lean on their experience on the home office, if you will, in Omaha, Nebraska, because they've done lots and lots of small school districts all over. Some large ones also, Orlando, Florida, and what have you, but all across the country, and therefore they have learned over the years, 23 years that they've been in business. And I believe that that's why CSBA selected them to represent CSBA in California. A national firm with lots of success and local consultants with a strong knowledge of California politics, California finance, California Common Core, all of the curriculum changes that are occurring now. It's kind of a melting of the big company with lots of experience to bring to CSBA with local consultants. And Molly and I aren't the only consultants. There are several others that are coming on board and are going to be going through training. Probably the reason we're here tonight, though, as the second presentation we've made since McPherson and Jacobson were selected by CSBA, is because, number one, we have experience in small districts. Number two, we've been doing searches. Some of the other consultants coming on board are school board members, assistant superintendents, or superintendents that have just retired and are going to need to come up to speed. So I think that plays into what Molly was sharing with you as well.
Thanks. If I can follow up on it. So the relationship with CSBA and McPherson is to just do whatever searches they might need internally, or is it to do searches for school districts external to CSBA? CSBA wants to get back in the superintendent search business,
but they don't want to use their own staff, and that's what it was when you had issues with them before. They were looking and interviewed companies, probably maybe some that have already presented to you tonight, and selected McPherson and Jacobson. I can't even tell you all the reasons. Of course, I wasn't there when the negotiation, the deliberations were going on. But CSBA wants to be able to offer all school districts in California who want to come to them and ask for them to make a presentation like we're doing, the opportunity to serve their members. My understanding is that a number of school board members have gone to CSBA and said, okay, so you had a problem back there 5-6 years ago. We want you back in the game here because we don't want to deal with just the private companies who aren't endorsed and aren't vetted by CSBA, who's here to represent you, school board members, not administrative. If I was here as a consultant for the administrative association, you might say, I wonder if he's just trying to move some of the administrators, his colleagues and whatever, into positions, as opposed to being here from CSBA through McPherson, where we truly understand that we don't move superintendents, we don't steal them back from where we've put them, we don't place them, and we don't go back and recruit them for other positions just because there's more money or a larger district. McPherson and Jacobson does not do that. CSBA is answering a call from the membership out there, if you will, John, to get back in and make school boards feel like CSBA is working with them and providing the service to them.
Okay. And will McPherson and Jacobson still be independently offering their services to districts, or are you only going to be working?
Not in California.
Not in California.
You will be receiving.
So what if we decided to hire you? Would that be directly with you, or do you now have some contract that would require
We do have
us
a
to go through
contract with CSBA. They're in the process of doing the printing and getting out the materials, business cards, and all that sort of thing. You will be hiring, I don't know how to say this exactly because I haven't seen what they're writing down, but you'll be hiring CSBA's consulting firm, McPherson and Jacobson, and you will be getting Don and Molly as your consultants.
Okay. And right now you're the only experienced consultants for McPherson in California. Is that, and you're bringing other people on, it sounds like, to ramp up.
Generally speaking, there are 5 or 6 others that are currently coming up to speed to do this. A couple of them we know have done some searches, but there are some who haven't. We have.
And you, both of you, are you new to McPherson? And yes. So have you done any superintendent searches for McPherson?
No.
So you've all been doing it for El Dorado County and other work?
Well, for 10 years, I was a partner in a search firm. Its name was For Administrators, and it was primarily aimed at small school districts.
Got it.
That was at a time when I and my 3 partners were retiring from superintendencies in small school districts, and Molly continued on. She was on the board of directors, as she mentioned, for the Small School District Association. But as I said, while we aimed at that population, we did, when requested, pick up a few like San Juan Capistrano, about 60, 70,000 students, and Newport Mesa and that sort of thing.
Got it.
Does that answer your
that
question,
does. That helps me kind of locate the context. And
yeah, sure.
Okay. And then, I mean, I did notice in the application that there are no California districts in the portfolio, at least that I
have not done any in California.
So this is sort of a new venture for McPherson, or maybe they've been trying, I don't know, but you're certainly, they're expanding, whatever, and now you have this new relationship with CSBA. So that helps me just kind of understand.
CSBA put a RFQ out. I don't know how widely, but I understand that it took them a year to make a decision, and of those firms that applied, McPherson Jacobson was the successful firm. And they have not done searches in California, although they do represent the Washington State School Boards Association, although they called it school directors up there instead of school boards, and several others. I can't recall it. Louisiana, Arkansas, Iowa, I think. They do have this kind of connection, this kind of a contract with other state associations. And then in other states, they don't. They just simply are there like some of the other folks that you've interviewed that are independents, and the way I was for the first 10 years, we did our searches in California, and we did 2 in Nevada because I live fairly close to Nevada. It was just simple and easy.
Thanks.
Well, we have about, never ready. 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes. I have one final pre-written question, and then we'll do follow-up questions. And that pre-written question, that final one is, if you can describe previous efforts in engaging teachers in the superintendent selection process. And you've basically touched on it, but I just wanted to make sure I asked that question.
They would definitely be part of the 2 different groups of stakeholders that we would be meeting with. We'd meet maybe separately with them if you as a board decided that's how you would like to do, or we could meet with them as a group, administrators and them, classified and them, whatever you think would work best for your district. The same thing is true when you pick a group who will do interviewing for you and give you feedback. Definitely teachers would be a part of that. We are old teachers, and so we do understand where teachers are coming from, experienced, and we have relatives as teachers, and so I think we really bring a comfort level that we can meet with and talk with teachers and feel like we're representing them to you.
Great.
You're still the boss.
Sometimes. Look, thank you both so much. Do you have more to add to that? Go for it.
Yes, I'd like to say that in the searches I've done, I've done them for school boards who say, we are the school board. It is our fiduciary responsibility, and there's not going to be anybody else involved. And I know search firms that will only do it that way. I did that. That's the way they wanted it. Remember, customized to however you, especially with the experience that you've had, however you'd like to have it done. We do recommend, if you ask us, let's say you had never done a search before, if you ask us, what would be the best way to do this? We would respond, involve as many people as would like to be involved. Whether it's formally, or a formal meeting with the city council, with the Lions Club, or whether it's informal, and it's a group of people. We would definitely recommend that you involve your administrators and your teachers and your classified. If they want to come together and give input to what they think should be good for the district through us and back to you, we would recommend that very highly. Sometimes we've had situations where the relationships between the various unions, for example, haven't been good. Consequently, they've asked for an independent opportunity to interact, and that's what we do. We set it up for them. All of that and how and why comes back through us. It's the way we operate to you. Then we give you some scenarios as to how you might want to go forward with the interviews. I've had some, as I mentioned, some school boards say, just us. I've had others say, we want the candidates to go through formal interviews with a group of stakeholders and then with us. They can have their questions and we will have ours. We've done that numerous times. That's one of the most popular procedures that school boards often request. We also, there's a danger in that, because if you're the candidate, depending on who you go to first, whether your first interview is with the board or whether it's your stakeholders, your energy level, your adrenaline is going to be different. They're going to see a bit different picture of you, both verbally and non-verbally. And so one of the things that has worked well that we've suggested to some boards, some have said great, some have said no, that's not the way we want to do it, is we ask the board after the input comes in that Molly's been talking about, when the actual interviews start, to select 6, 7, a representative from each group, and ask them to come in and sit and listen to the formal interviews, the questions that you ask. They don't ask questions, they sit and they write pros and cons, pros and cons, pros and cons. And when the interviews are finished, then they share those with you. Pros and cons. They're not allowed to lobby, rank, pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, right? Then you thank them, excuse them, They say, thank you very much for letting us participate, and then you go into your deliberations. There's several different ways of getting the input, right down to the interview process itself. It's up to you. And again, as I said right off the bat, we work for you. We will customize it to make it work the way you want it to work. And if we do it that way, we think we will bring you a panel, a pool, if you will, of really qualified people who are appropriate for your needs, for your personalities, for the directions you want to go. And our company that we've just gone to work with, McPherson, said, don't you let us down on that. 80% of them are still there after 5 years, and 75% of them still there after 10 years, and some of them are still there 15 years. I don't know about you, but unless there's a good reason for a superintendent to move on, retirement, whatever, you want the stability, and that's usually what's best for your kids. Oh, there is an online survey. It's in the book there. It's called a Survey Monkey. I don't know why anybody put monkey on it. But what it is a list of questions that goes out, and everybody in your community that can get on your website, anybody with a computer, fills that out. All that information comes to you. It's compiled by our office in Nebraska. And that also gives you a written record, not just the ones who've come to your meetings that we will conduct, but the ones who can't and don't have the time.
Right.
And so you get a lot of input that way also.
Well, that's great. Great. Thank you. Thank you both. I'll now turn to board members for follow-up questions, starting from my left. Figured out my right and left right now.
Thank you. Very comprehensive presentations. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I don't have anything.
Okay. Anyone else?
Where are you on the confidentiality? Going public or not going public?
Confidentiality up till you select the candidates that you want to interview. We recommend that you pick 3 or 4, sometimes 5.
So
But
the
once
one final round.
Yes, once they become the
2 or 3
ones.
or 4 or 5.
Yes.
And those you recommend.
Those then
be
become
made
public.
Okay.
Because you need to have that transparency if you want to keep the trust and confidence of your community.
Do you have an experience that limit the pool of candidates?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Have you experienced telling, we've heard some people say, well, you can do it either way. Telling people you will be publicly divulged in the final round can limit your pool because people don't want to be divulged unless they've actually been offered the job. So if you can talk to those two.
We tell candidates, that's part of our new process. We tell candidates it'll be confidential all the way up until you have been vetted by the board and discussed by the board. If you're a finalist and if you're not interested enough in this district to let your name become public at that point, don't apply. If you're on the run for some reason, or if that's a serious, sometimes superintendents would love, they're sitting superintendents, they'd love to come here, but they got a great relationship with their board. Yeah. If their name becomes public too soon, when they're not right down to fairly close to the finals, then they have to go back home and their board said, we love you. Why are you running away from, so the question is a very, very good question, but we believe, our company believes, and I assume CSBA does because they hired them on this basis, is that confidentiality is kept until you've made your evaluation of the candidates and your deliberations on all of the information that we bring you and that your community brings you. And then if there are 4, 3, 2, there may be only 1. Typically, it's more like 4 or 5. And we bring them to you. At that point, depending on how you would like to do it, it's all yours. We're not here. Or, if you would like for one or both of us to help coordinate the interviews, we certainly will be willing to do that. It's not included in the price that Mr. Jacobson quoted you, but we'll do it anyway for nothing. Molly and I. You'd be our first new CSBA client. And boy, does it have to be right. And do you have to be happy? And do you have to have a 5-0 vote on this?
That's right.
So if you hire us, we have more motivation to really make it work. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, and I guess from your previous experience through searches, I'm curious about outside or external to California candidates coming into the state and how successful or not that's been for you.
We've had a few. I'm thinking back now. I mentioned to you I did 50, 60, 70 over that period of time, 13 years. I did one in Nevada for Douglas County. All the districts in Nevada are countywide districts, and I did one there, and they wanted a national search, and it's the fishbowl in Nevada and Florida. There can be nothing in closed session. It all has to be done in public, and the room was full every time we had anyone in. After they went through all the candidates, some very good ones, one from Tennessee, one from Arizona, as I recall, another one from Idaho, who eventually got another job in California. It was a very good candidate. But when all was said and done, they decided to go with their assistant superintendent. But we did have the experience of recruiting and talking to. Here's another thing that we bring to the table, too, that maybe some other presenters don't. If we need information, confidential information, vetting, if you will, on candidates that are from out of California, we have a great source because we have consultants working in all those different states who know people. If I don't know them, if Molly doesn't know them, we've worked in Ohio, in Louisiana, in California, Princeton, New Jersey. If we don't know people, you got to call people that are not on their resume. That's a real key of finding out what's really going on. The last thing we want is to bring you a candidate. We're not going to recommend the candidates. We're going to bring you the candidates that we think fit what you're looking for. Now, at some point, if you want us involved, and at some point you want to think, what do you think? You've really talked to all the resume. Then, then I would give you my 2 cents on, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 candidates. But that's all. I'm not going to write. I have to share this with you. I did a search where the school board decided it was going to do it itself. No one else involved. And so I worked, had a pool of candidates in there. And in my mind, 1 through 5, first 2 right on. This is an elementary district. There have been elementary superintendents in small districts. This was a little bit of a step up, a little closer into the city. You'd be surprised how many rural superintendents like get closer to the city. And the third one, okay, had a lot to learn, but bright young guy, great references. The fourth one, a super guy. I knew him. I knew him before the search even started. And he asked me if he should apply. And I said, well, this is elementary district. You're a high school principal, and all you've ever taught was ag. I said, but don't ever let anybody say that you wouldn't make it just right with, So if you want to apply, do so. He's now the county superintendent, and he obviously was very successful. So you never know about those things. But if you have the opportunity, either way, with McPherson and Jacobson, of us bringing you the candidates and then walking away and leaving you alone. I've never done that. This will be a new one for me because I sit quietly and I help school boards, particularly when acronyms are used, and they're used a lot by candidates, and not everybody sitting at the board table may know, unless they've been on the board a long time, what those acronyms. I try to help out, but I never rank, lobby, or whatever, just like we won't let anyone else do that with you. You're the ones that are going to make that decision. But sometimes, if it's not real clear about the strengths and weaknesses, yes, step forward and say, yeah, I'll share this with you, share that with you. But again, it's your decision, and you got to be real happy with them. All 5 of you.
Thank you. Follow-up questions? All right. Well, we've concluded our questions for this evening. If you have any final comments, feel free at this point.
Just like to say that I know you're a good board. We only got the message 3 days ago that we should come over here and represent CSBA and represent McPherson and Jacobson. That, I don't know about how CSBA's, what they're going to tell us once we get up and running on this. And I don't know what McPherson and Jacobson are going to tell us. But I've told boards no. Beverly Hills, a number of years ago, interviewed me, decided to go in an interim for a while, and called back and said, okay, we're ready for the search now. Would you come in and do the search? And I said, I'm sorry. I didn't say it this way, but I'll say it to you. They were so dysfunctional, I could not imagine how any good superintendent could go in there and be successful. And I didn't want to be part of the process that condemned them and their superintendent to an unhappy, unsuccessful, and I didn't do it. I told them no. I thanked them very much for inviting me, but and they were paying big money too. It's Beverly Hills. I thanked them very much and said, I'm afraid you need to find someone else. And the superintendent they hired was encouraged to leave within 2 years. So, I know in just the 2.5 days since we got the call to come and meet with you that you're a good board, that you're together, you're here for the kids, we're here for the kids, and we would be delighted to be your search consultant. We would be delighted for you to be the first district to hire the new CSBA consultants, and we would be delighted to come back during the first year of the employment, Molly being the specialist in this, helping the superintendent adjust, helping communicate between you and the superintendent, help you set goals that then you will evaluate that superintendent on. We'd be delighted to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both so much. And just to let you know, we are now moving on to our E2 after a 5-minute recess, if I can please ask. And just really appreciate everything. And hopefully this evening we will move forward with a selection of a search firm. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're now reconvening back into open session, and we're moving on to item, as there's no members of the public, I don't want to forget to offer that opportunity for any comments, and seeing none, we'll move on to item E2, selection of executive search firm.
Yes.
So in terms of process, we've now had an opportunity to hear from 4 search firms. I guess what I'll start with maybe is there some, I don't want to go to consensus immediately, I guess, but the question of, are there any ones of the 4 that we absolutely felt like it wouldn't be a match for the district? Maybe go that direction. I'd offer. Anyone speak up? Based on this evening and having more time.
Well, I would, I think I would cross HYA off the list.
Okay.
I mean, their presentation was fine, their materials were good. Their materials they presented, I mean, around the issue of confidentiality, and do you go with an open or closed, or presented I thought a very good chart showing the pros and cons and seeming to be open to going either way and being able to do it either way. The particular, gentleman they brought doesn't feel comfortable doing it except in a closed way. And, when we asked the other groups who presented, they all seem to think that, if you keep it confidential until that final 2 or 3 candidates, that does not significantly impede your pool. And I think I think that's the direction I'm heading in, is to have that kind of process. We just saw Berkeley do that, I think. We've seen other districts do it, and so since we don't have, HYA doesn't seem to be able to comfortably do that, I would cross them off.
And how does other board members feel?
Agree completely.
And head nodding and silence I'll take as compliance. Is that the phrase? So so I would agree with that. And on to, I guess, the next one. Anyone feel pretty strongly about removing from the bottom up, I guess?
I mean, I feel, well, I guess I want to know, since I missed the presentation from the Costco group.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
What folks thought about the Costco group. I know of the remaining two that I saw, and including what I've seen from, the materials of the Costco group, which I study very closely. I have an opinion about what's my clear top one, but I guess I don't want to prejudice the Costco group by having missed the presentation. So if people can give me some highlights or lowlights or medium lights.
Medium lights. I'll aim for some medium lights. I think really helpful conversation, I'll say. I don't know that we got a great deal of details or specifics from the presentation, and only, justifiably so that the person that would lead the charge was not able to participate this evening, and we had the chairman of the board present. Who I'm certain is not the one doing the pitches, on searches. So that was evident, but I do think there was some confidence that I actually wrote down in familiarity, because this is probably the third or fourth time I've gone through this process. So I did feel very confident as that this person or this organization was local. And I appreciate Member Nguyen actually having, raised them as a strong group to look at. So that was helpful. Now, after hearing all the rest, I wouldn't position them really high and, just, without additional conversation from board. But I thought that they were very knowledgeable about what the process could look like. It just didn't feel like we had tangible,
I didn't. What I struggled with was just how vague the answers were, and there wasn't a lot of in-depth about what Emeryville needs, what we need.
That's true for all of them. Yeah.
So that I would agree with you.
But it was really good. It was really helpful. I mean, I liked that kind of struck me. It seemed very familiar, I'll say that. It did not feel like someone who wouldn't be able to acquire the information, and I think most of them struggled with knowing exactly our story. Actually, all of them, they didn't necessarily dive deep, and I'm certain because that takes some time, and you're throwing out so many proposals, right? But I think if we had I think we have stronger ones. I'll say that.
I think as far as knowing our district, the closest was Ray and Associates, as far as knowing kind of what we're looking for and what our demographics are, and so.
In process.
Yeah.
I like how she just jumped in. That's it.
Josh or Miguel, anything in particular about Costco that you want to?
No, I agree with my colleagues.
I would also agree. I think that it was very well characterized.
Okay. I have two observations overall. One, superintendents don't die. They just join search firms.
And I see board members have a future as well. I'm like, what? Okay, I can retire and do that. Okay.
Who knew, I didn't even know this industry existed.
Exactly.
And two, I was, on your last comment, somewhat surprised that people didn't seem to have done much particularized research about our district or even have the RFP in mind, because I think we threw some twists, and that's why we put the question in there. We threw, some extra stuff in the RFP on community engagement, and no one was like, oh yes, we're going to do that, or that would be more if you want to do that piece, but we always do this piece. So that, it's like you go into a job interview, you look at the website and read what the employer's doing and what they're up to. So, but it was kind of across the board, so it's not a ding on anyone in particular.
But I think, and I'll just jump in. I think my top two, I'll say, is Ray and Associates 1, and then McPherson and Jacobson. I don't want to, I don't even want to say the word underplay or whatever. I don't want to underestimate the irony here about McPherson, Jacobson, and CSBA Alliance. And it was not a funny thing at the time, absolutely not. But I do find it quite interesting that that's new, and that was new information. So would it have played a part in, my thought in terms of bringing them to even interview? No. I was still curious. And I'm glad we actually had the slate that we did just to know what was out there. But I just find there is a little, not in a bad, irony in a bad way, just an interesting, pause, and appreciate them coming forward with that information. I think was very, valuable, instead of us saying, oh, it's you and this is the contract with you, right? So I just wanted to raise that awareness of that piece of it was illuminating. But they seem to be a really strong couple, the two of them, in terms of working with small districts, rural albeit, but definitely size.
So for me, the Ray and Associates was the clear strongest candidate. I thought that the one that sort of got me most excited. I thought their presentation was excellent on the PowerPoint side, and I thought they could have done a little better in responding to our questions. Specific, like listening, but it was sort of like almost overeager to please us.
That's a good way to put it.
But again, that's somewhat related to everyone was sort of not tuned into our particular, agenda or what's going on, or ECCL, or but overall, still, I could see them engaging with our community
Right.
Effectively, and they seem not at all intimidated or afraid of the notion of being able to tell a candidate, we're going to make you public in the final stage. So be prepared, and as they said in their experience, a serious candidate will know that if they want the job, they're going to have to go through that, and that shouldn't, hasn't caused them to lose good candidates. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that made him attractive for sure. So have that confidence in making that statement, I think, was really spot on for what I think where the board is going. And I'm certain, even with any of the conversations that we had in terms of confidentiality, I'm certain that we're all amenable to having a dialogue or having that discussion about the best way, the best strategy. But they seem to be really clear that it's something that's doable, and it wouldn't. It may have an impact on the pool of candidates, but it also. I think there's some reassurance on both sides for the candidate as well as the board that they work very hard to get us the best candidate pool. So I thought that was helpful.
So can I make a motion for the board to accept Ray and Associates as the search firm for the superintendent for Emery Unified School District?
That was easy.
I'll second.
Wow.
Well, I'm in favor.
Well, any objections to that? And I will call for any abstentions.
I'll abstain.
And motion's carried, and we're going to work to negotiate a contract, I guess, now with Ray and Associates.
The one, I think they are the most expensive.
Right.
And I would just note that Mr. Gallo indicated a willingness to negotiate their expenses, and so we should take advantage of that.
Especially the video piece, I thought it was great. So
I like the video piece.
Yeah. So we do have presently an ad hoc committee of the board, John and myself, and if with the board's pleasure.
And John Quinn,
if as necessary, as an advisory, for sure. If the board would mind the two of us working with them to narrow out and come up with the right plan in terms of a signature Will that work?
Yes, work.
Perfect.
Great direction of the board. Okay, so we're now adjourning the meeting. Thank you, staff, for being present. And many sacrifices have been made to do this, and we just really appreciate the family sacrifices and the personal sacrifices. And thank you, Brandon and family. Meeting adjourned.